looks like it's about 40 by 120. Over to 273, 273. Over the tire, you can't keep the tire. Over to 273, 273.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Danny Sheridan. We're here live from FDIC. I'm talking today about my first new battalion chief. And just before we start, we'll get a little business out of the way. I'd like to really thank 3M and Scott for their sponsorship. I mean, without them, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible. All right, so 3M Scott, Fire Safety, is a proud sponsor today, and they're sponsoring our radio show. So thanks, a shout out to Scott and 3M. So anyway, you all know me, Danny Sheridan, but I'd like to introduce my two guests. I'll have them introduce themselves. And Tiger?
Thanks, Danny.
A little about yourself. Just
Sure. Tiger Schmittendorf. Proud to say that I just very recently retired as the Deputy Fire Coordinator for the Erie County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services in Buffalo, New York. Position I held there for about 20 years. And retirement offered me the opportunity to do a lot of fun and exciting things, staying in the fire service and doing things like coming to FDIC. So thanks for having me.
Mark?
I'm Mark Stepanek. I'm chief of the Lakeview Fire District, which is a small district south of Buffalo, New York. I've also been in public safety communications for the last 23 years.
So anyway, thanks, Tiger, Mark, for being here. So anyway, you know, I have to say, this has been one of the, if not the most memorable shows I've ever been in. I've been here now maybe 15 years or so. I've been involved with fire engineering. I write, you know, for the magazine, and I do the radio programs, and I don't know what's setting this one apart, but this one has really, for myself, turned into some like just an amazing conference for me. And you know, here I wear, like, I'm kind of wearing three hats. I'm also here in the capacity of my job, which is the FDNY. I'm going to be starting some training liaison stuff with the FDNY. I also have my other company, Mutual Aid Fire Training. We do predominantly work in Chile and other parts of the world, and myself. So I sometimes have to wear three hats, and I sometimes have to figure out who I'm talking to for a reason. But it's been a great week for me. You know, I see a lot of names on Twitter, you know, like Chris Norm and Ted Ness and all these guys. And, you know, I think I've taken two classes. I took Ted's class, and I think I sat in on Rick George's class. And, you know, I wanted to do some different stuff this week. And, you know, the one thing that I profess, too, is that we should always remain teachable. I mean, and sometimes we get a little caught up in, like, you know, I know things and I don't want to change. But this has been a real interesting conference for me because, you know, I'm looking at my phones. I have an iPhone, whatever it is, 6, and I know that, you know, it started out probably as a 1, and now they're up to 10 or whatever. And my captain, I remember a captain told me very early in my career, he says, and he's Irish, he goes, you know, he says, you're either putting it out or it's putting you out. You know, it's putting you right out the door. You know, you're never standing in the middle, you know. And I was like, I think it's like that in everything in life. You know, you never really, you know, move. You're never in the middle. You're either moving towards something or you're moving in the other direction, you know. Right. And I felt that,
or a sports analogy where they tell you, you know, whether it's, you know, football or boxing or whatever, keep your feet moving, right? Hockey, right?
Yeah.
Keep your feet moving.
Yeah.
And if you fall forward.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
You know, I feel, you know, I have to tell you, I did the 4-hour workshop. And it went. I thought it went. Mark, you in the class. I mean, honestly, it's okay. I mean, I think I have a good message. I think I have a lot of knowledge. But you know, I'm very conscientious about what I want. I want the student to come to the class and say that was the best class I ever took. You know, I want them to come to my class. I want to give them all my knowledge. You know, and I look at the evals, and out of the 50 or so, there was a few that were not glaring. You know, like but I'm okay with it, you know, and I think as an instructor is, you know, we have to be able to accept criticism, you know, and when you get the criticism, not just throw it and say, okay, well, that's nonsense, you know. And what I did was, and as you well know, that I took it like I want all those evals to be like glaring, you know?
Right.
And because I want that guy now may not have his best experience here, and so what can I do better to make that happen? So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that you know, yeah, I could keep doing, you know, this great information passing out there, but what can I do better? So I'm going to tell the story now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it was Monday morning or Tuesday morning. I can't remember. Tuesday morning. Yeah. We're with Rick George. Rick George, very dear friend of mine, does a great class on all this mental
tactical resilience.
And I'm very interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and Rick has been a friend of mine for almost 17, 18 years now. I brought Rick down to Ecuador. He's taught with me in New Hampshire, you know, on the fire side of it, you know. So when I see Rick, we have a common interest in things, and you know, with Mark, you know, we have outside interests other than the fire department that are, you know, we're all kind of into the same kind of things, you know. So that morning, I was still kind of, you know, like kind of not down, but I was just like
kind of in a fog,
in a rut, you know. And I just wanted to sit with Rick, and you know, and then this other guy joins us, Frank, yeah, and I was just like, I don't want to talk to him. I just want to talk to Rick. And he came in, and then they started engaging in conversations, you know. And then I noticed you sitting over there, and I said, and then you came over, and I was like, come on. I just want to have my breakfast, coffee, talk to Rick. And then I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden you came up with a piece of paper or something, because I was talking about something about the class, and then, and why don't you explain that piece of paper, that napkin that you handed to me?
Sure.
Because I don't think I'll ever forget that napkin.
Well, it was interesting. I had seen you, and you and I had not met, and I knew Frank a long time, and Rick and I are social media friends, but we had also never met in person. And I said good morning, and I had actually, kind of like you, just wanted to have a quiet breakfast, and I had some work to do back home and things of that nature. And so I sat a couple of tables away. And then I think it was Rick asked Frank who I was, and he says, "Oh, that's Tiger Schmidt." I said, "Oh my God, we've been, you know, communicating online and everything. Never met him." He comes over and he says, "Hey, why don't you come join us for breakfast?" And I said, "Well, looked like you guys were engaged in a pretty intense conversation. I just didn't want to interrupt." And he says, "We are engaged in an intense conversation, and we want you to be a part of it." Right. So literally, I walked into the middle of a conversation about how you were sharing your frustration of, you know, it just didn't feel like you connected with the participants in your class.
Mark, be honest. I mean, you know, it's hard sometimes for myself when I give my class to, because all I can see is like really what I'm doing, you know, and I know in my mind what I want it to look like, but sometimes it's really good to, you know, just very general terms. I don't want to get into specifics.
I thought you looked genuine, you know, as a guy like me, you know, I have a fire year in my first two, maybe.
Yeah.
So I have to come here from people like you and how to manage incidents like that. I've always been very, very training oriented, you know, and as I've grown up in the ranks, command training has been very important to me, whether it be cool card or stuff like this. Yeah. And I thought it was a great course. You have to remember, you can't be all things to all people. You know, people respond to different personalities. Right. You know what I mean? You know, if you look at the lecture list, there's a diverse group of people, you know, and there's some that maybe would rub me wrong, but not rub me wrong, and vice versa. And that's just how it is. It's kind of how we tune into certain things.
So like I said, so, you know, that being said, you know, like I said, you know, I think it's like there's a Bible verse where, you know, the old woman that loses one thing, you know, she'll go looking for that one thing. So you know, we tend to do that. Like, you know, we want it to be all good.
All good.
So if that one person was unhappy, that means more to me than the other 49 that were happy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know, and so
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, now, so what can I do different? And then you came up with the
Right, and you had shared kind of that somebody had kind of, jokingly or otherwise just made the offhanded comment that, stop telling so many stories.
Right.
And I walked in not knowing you, not knowing really a lot of the background, and I said, that could not have been further from the truth. And a lot of my emphasis in today's fire service has been for a long time is the importance of storytelling in the fire service. And I guess just blindly or kind of courageously shared with you what I call my theory of connectivity.
Right.
And I truly believe in a lot of my emphasis today, my most popular class, from the Xbox to the box alarm, is all about engaging and connecting with today's generation, which we know is, happens on different channels and in different ways than it did with our generation.
Right.
And I feel strongly that to be a leader in today's fire service or any organization, to be a leader in the world, you need to so much more than just effective communication skills. That's not enough. And I believe that we need effective connectivity skills. And what I mapped out on that napkin was, it was a restaurant napkin, for the record. It wasn't a bar napkin. So we had that going for us. But my theory of connectivity. And it's kind of looks like a mathematical equation. And it's GS plus RA divided by GIS equals connectivity. And what those letters stand for is connectivity. My theory of connectivity is great storytelling plus relevant application divided by a genuine interest in the student or the listener, however you phrase that. Right. And that expands into great storytelling without relevant application is, hey, nice story, thanks for sharing, right? Relevant application without a story to attach it to lacks context. It truly lacks connectivity. And you remove a genuine interest in the listener, and no great story or relevant application can save you. And that dividing line, if you will, also represents, to me, that there is a, figurative, literal, fine line between telling too many stories and telling enough stories to give them that connectivity. And that's just something I came up with on my own. I don't know where it came from. Right. And so often I work towards the visual representation of how I can convey that and then kind of work my way backwards. So it's genuine storytelling plus relevant application divided by a genuine interest in the listener.
So we'll take an example like with Mark. So I know Mark is from Lakeview, where he's up near Buffalo. And my biggest fear is that I have these, I think of my stories, they're all in a box somewhere. And I did the math. I told you this morning at breakfast, 32 years. Even if I did one a year, that's 32 stories. If I did one a month, we're at 400, and there's probably more than that, Not only my stories, but stories that I've gotten from other guys in my company, fires that have happened while I was working. So, there's literally thousands. Right. And my biggest fear always is that, I got a class full of people from all over the country, the world, whatever. I had a guy from Brussels, and here's this idiot telling FDNY stories. Right. And what's Mark going to think about this FDNY story? So
how is he going to relate?
That's what we signed up for.
And can he relate to
so
it?
there's a disconnect
Right.
that I've been kind of spinning around in my head for the last 10 years or so, And it's kind of ironic how all these circles are kind of lining up, like all these holes are lining up, because I had just done a class in Fort Myers. I actually, there's Jeff Morris is his name. He's down in Fort Myers, Florida. And he's got this thing called the Brotherhood Ride. And what they do is they raise money. Right? My sister's involved with it. So I said, I'll do anything for you guys. Right. So what they do is they ride around the country or whatever, and they raise money for fallen firefighters and other emergency workers. But, with the firefighter side of it anyway. And so my sister arranged, they both work for the airlines. They flew me down to Fort Myers. And I did my class, just like the one I did with Mark, And it's like it is what it is. It's very definitive. So it goes in order. I compartmentalize, and I just give this class, and I try to spice it up a little bit, but And at the end of the class, the guys clapped, and it was great, and a lot of accolades. But I could sense, like I told you, how that nonverbal communication.
Right.
And I said, what is it? And he said, well, you didn't really tell me any good fire stories from FDNY. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't want to hear that. Like, no, we want to hear them.
Exactly, right.
I'm like,
Right.
really? Like, why would you want to hear these stories about, the job I had when I was, working?
I look at the rest of the conference. I generally gravitate towards anecdotal things, near misses or line of duty stuff.
Right.
And stuff I can learn, that story that I can learn from and apply to what I'm doing, as opposed to the more theoretical, it's just not my cup of tea.
Right.
It might be somebody else's.
Yeah.
Again, you're not going to be all things to all people.
Right. So going forward, I mean, this is has been, that's what I'm saying, this conference is just, for me, talking to Chris Naum and Ted Nass and John, John Salk, he and I are just two of the same. Like I was just got here just now, just had a soda with him, and I said to him, John, I said, we have the parallel careers. We both were firemen in truck companies.
Yeah.
Then we became officers. He was in Engine 48 as captain. I was Engine 46. He was in the squad. I was in the squad. He's in the 18th battalion. I'm in the 3rd battalion. I mean, we have a same track. We come from the same school.
Right.
But you look at him, he's like Joe Charisma. He tells these stories, and I don't, I'm like, you don't want to hear that story,
Yeah.
So
well, and what we all need to realize is, with you have plenty of experience. We have certainly limited experience in comparison, but the value is not in the quantity; it's in the quality of it. And it's almost, I think, to a certain extent, selfish not to share the story with somebody, because as you and I discussed over breakfast or lunch or dinner, whatever it was we've had in the last couple of days, the meals we've shared, I fear about this diminishing experience that a lot of people, not certainly in the setting you're in necessarily, but certainly in our settings and others like it, there's just this, there are communities where we're actually winning the fight of fire prevention, and that's a great thing, but we're also getting less and less experience every day. And to me, it's not just a quantity issue, it's a quality issue. It's less and less of a variety of experiences that we're getting. So it's incumbent upon, those who do have the experience, however limited it may be, to get back to being better storytellers as a means of not only sharing those experiences, but the knowledge that comes with it, and the data that comes with it, and also the values that come with it as well. Because that's a lot of what the stories, obviously are or inherently are. Maybe sometimes when we don't realize it, but what you're really talking about is the values of the fire service and the things that we know and cherish so much, and that level of camaraderie that is truly unique to our profession. And that's just as important as the tactics and the strategies and the lessons that can be learned from.
One thing that maybe I could say I'm more proud of, though, and I guess, Mark, you were in the class, and I thought, I'm hoping it came across that way, but I'm not afraid to tell you about my mistakes.
No.
And I've learned much.
That's a long list.
Yeah. What did I say, Mark? Did I say that the list of mistakes was probably this long?
Yeah. I think you open up with, if you've never made a mistake in a fireground, raise your hand. Thank God nobody raised their hand, because they're full of shit.
So, and I'm telling you, the way I am, I make a mistake. I could all the way from firefighter to chief.
Yeah.
Everywhere in between. Making mistakes with stretching foam lines or roof rope things or anything. Yeah. Then I become an expert on it. I go the other extreme. That will never happen.
Well, you learn from it, and hopefully you're not going to do the same mistake.
But in a sense, what I'm hoping in the future now is that, we have to find a line between whether we're being the Monday morning quarterback and saying, pointing fingers, where it's a general, okay, well, this fire wasn't there, but, this is what happened. And maybe this happened, maybe that wouldn't happen. You know what I'm saying? But how do you find that balance of not coming off as this guy up on a high horse somewhere, pointing fingers down well, you did that, you shouldn't have done that. And
no, we all need to take the attitude, what can I learn from that experience? I haven't had it yet, and maybe I'll never have it. If it was a bad experience, hopefully I'll never have to have it.
Yeah.
But what can I take away from what was shared with me? And, you know, having both sympathy and empathy for the person who did have the experience, whatever's more appropriate given the situation.
Like I'll tell you, like I can tell a quick fire story. Went to a job.
Is there such thing as a quick fire story?
This will be a quick one. Okay. I'll give the definitely the Reader Digest condensed version of it, you know. But no, we went in as an additional engine on a taxpayer fire, you know, and chief ordered me to go. I was captain. He wanted me up on the roof with a hose line, and the portable ladder's up, and this guy Eddie Doyle, God rest his soul, died. He just died recently, 9/11 illness. Great guy. I love the guy. 82 engine. Eddie's got the nozzle. We're going up the portable ladder. Now, you have to picture this building, you know, big rectangular, right? And without thinking, I step over this chasm, which is probably about like 2 feet wide, right? I step over it.
Because you know you need to get to the other side.
I have to get off the ladder and I have to go over this big chasm, right? Not even thinking anything of it, you know. And then I said, "Come on, Eddie, get the." And he's looking at me like, "Cap, a little problem here, don't we?" The wall was pulling away from the rest of the taxpayer, you know.
Wow.
I was like, "Oh man, like how did I miss that?" Right? I stepped over this.
Right.
It's not like I had to I missed it. Like I literally had to step over it.
Yeah.
But I was so focused on getting the line to hit the fire that I missed it. And Eddie's like, "Cap, I think we better just maybe back off a little bit." And I said, "Oh, thanks, Eddie. Thank you." I got on the radio, you know, to command. I said, "You know, I think the parapet's pulling away."
Yeah.
Chief ordered everybody off the roof, and that was that, you know. And so I don't. What's the relevance on that story? You know, what's the takeaway? And the takeaway is
situational awareness.
Situational awareness.
You can take that story and apply it to, you know, some theories.
And I'm not joking when I say that I have hundreds of them stories.
Sure.
And yet, I feel like who wants to hear that story?
No.
We do. Yeah. That's why we're here.
And again, that's what I refer to in my theory of connectivity, is that fine line between stories with relevance and stories of, and not for nothing, but firefighters like to just sit around and share stories. You know, we're storytellers by trade, right? You know, and my wife actually accuses me of embellishing sometimes.
Well,
and I've told her a million times. Yeah.
Well, the old motto in 17 Truck was that don't ever let the truth stand in the way of a good story.
That's right.
Yeah. And I can remember guys like Billy Lawson, Jimmy Gilligan, and Tom McDowell. These guys at 17 Truck. You know, when I got there, and you know, we just go around the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And you tell these stories, and like this guy Billy Lawson, man, he was one of the greatest firemen I ever worked with. He looked like Yosemite Sam, right?
Nice.
Tough as a bar of iron. I mean, just tough as nails, you know. And but it's so funny because he would just keep telling the same stories over and over.
Yeah.
And as soon as like he said 2 words, I'd just be like, "Okay, this is story number 52." But there was great learning in those stories. You know, like I would listen to those stories and say, "Oh, okay, yeah." So maybe.
Well, and he repeated them because he was afraid maybe you wouldn't catch on the first time, right? So, maybe that was his theory.
But it was half entertainment, but half instructional. You know, and I would that would be the zen for me.
Yeah.
You know, to make a class that would be, you know, not where I see guys nodding off and, you know, okay, here we go, and we're talking about water supply, and, you know, but, you know, make it exciting.
Sure.
You know, and at the same time educational, but a little bit entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, and I shared with you too, a lot of times when I look for solutions to challenges we face inside our fire service, the very first place I look is everywhere but the fire service.
Right.
You know, I read magazines, I read books about every industry, every other discipline, and say, what can I take away from that? And sometimes you just have to, you know, change a word to fire, and it's, you know, you can just overlay it on whatever the challenge is. And sometimes you don't even have to do that. But, you know, one book that comes to mind is titled Made to Stick. It's written by 2 brothers, Chip and Dan Heath, and it's why some ideas thrive and other ideas survive. And even in that, neither one of them are firefighters, know anything about the fire service, but they know about the value of storytelling in the fire service. And they talk about every time we come back from a run or some type of an incident, and we rehash that story, you know, on the tailboard of the apparatus or up in the day room or the kitchen table, whatever the case may be, and we share that experience with those who have not had that experience yet themselves.
Right.
We create what they refer to as a mental flight simulator for those who have not had that experience.
Right.
And in many instances, and there's literally living examples of it, where when those listeners, if you will, found themselves in that same situation, maybe, you know, climbing over a parapet wall and about to step over a chasm, they may say, remember that story Danny Sheridan told me?
You're right.
Holy crap. I almost did the same thing, but then knew how to react to that situation and avoid what, you know, the potential catastrophe that could have come from it.
You know, that reminds me of something like something I do personally in my own battalion. I've been in my area, let's say, on and off for the better part of 32 years. I've worked in the 6th Division in South Bronx, which is everywhere from the river up to the Cross Bronx Expressway. Right, so a good size, you know, probably the same size as an average city, right? And I know that area intimately. I know every block. I know the addresses. I know where the buildings, the projects. I know where the private dwellings are, tenements, taxpayers. I know the whole gamut. And what I do for myself is I drive around and I look at a building, 400 Brook Avenue, okay, 20-story, fireproof multiple dwelling, long hallway, elevators in the middle, 2 stairways on the side, 10 apartments. You know, I know the layouts of the apartments,
right.
And I can visualize scenarios. I know where the compactors are, I know where the compact room is, elevators, problems. And what I do is it's just intuitive,
right?
Just constant. And I read this book, and it was a story about the Vietnam vet, a Vietnam prisoner of war. And he was in camp for 3 or 4 years, and he was an avid golfer. And every single day, he would sit in his cell, and he would play 18 holes, every swing, every stroke, in his mind. So he would start out, here's the first hole, it's a dog leg to the left, it's 300 yards, you know, and then he would hit it, he would visualize the ball landing on the fairway, hit it, you know, second stroke, and then he would play it in the putt and the whole thing, and he'd do the whole 18 holes. Every single day he was in that prison of war camp. He was released from prison. I don't know what the time frame was. First day back on a golf course, bang, whatever he shot, 80, whatever it was. Like he never missed a beat.
Wow.
Because in his mind, he had just played it out so many times that it was just muscle memory. It was just memory. Yeah. And the way I think, being in command, and in my position, being the first 2 battalion chief, is that that's the first 5 minutes.
Right.
You know, it's getting that engine attack, fire attack, getting that search and rescue team, getting that vent going, getting all these things lined up perfectly, and knowing where to put the hose lines, where to send the search teams, when to vent, when not to vent, not drawing fire, and getting enough resources there, and et cetera, et cetera. So I in particular have we've had a certain type of fire. This past week has been very busy for us. I actually just checked the news feed, and there was one in my area this morning, another 3rd alarm, top floor fire or whatever. And what I do is I've already got it. I really got it fleshed out in my mind how it's going to work out. You know, I know where I want the first hose line going. I know where the second hose line. I know I'm putting on the roof. I know where I want my searches done. I want to know how they check in for extension, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just do this with everything.
Yeah.
And it's all about just repetition.
Right.
It's repetition.
Like you said, muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, going along with what Mark's point is, okay, so maybe they only go to 1 fire a year. Listen, I live in Mayapack, New York, and I can count. I've been there 30 years. I think I can count, off the top of my head how many fires it's been in 30 years I lived there. I mean, maybe 35 in 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, where when I was in Squad 41, 35 fires we did in a month.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, a lot of it is certainly by the, you know, shake of the dice, luck of the draw of whether or not you have opportunity, but that doesn't change, you know, how you have the opportunity to prepare for it or how you should be preparing for it either.
So here's a takeaway from that. For a year, I was assigned to another borough. That's just a protocol in my job, right? You have to leave for a year and go somewhere else, and et cetera, et cetera. So I went to this company primarily because A, it was my old neighborhood, and B, because my best friend was in the truck company. Yeah. So I got there. I mean, it was just much dialed down, much ratcheted down, the intensity and everything from what I have been used to as a fireman and lieutenant. So it was much more sedate, more calm. And me and John Buckeye, a very, very good friend, we both come from the same, you know, we come from the same club. You know, we worked in a squad. And he worked in busy places as a lieutenant. He was in a 175 truck. I was in 58 engine. I was in SOC. So we were used to this high intensity drilling and training, and we weren't getting good feedback. We weren't getting good welcome. You know, we weren't feeling like we were feeling the love. You know.
Yeah.
And we would get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. You know. And you know, I sat the guys down one day. You know, I said, "Listen, guys," I said, "you know, just because we're not knocking it out of the park, we're not going to a fire a week or whatever it is, and we're only doing like I think one every few months, whatever it is, you know.
Right.
Doesn't mean we have to be a bad company. Doesn't mean that we have to be a bunch of just hopefuls running around like we're
Charlie Brown All-Stars.
Charlie Brown All-Stars, right? So so that being said, I had a few good people there, you know, and sometimes these guys, they just get stuck in a rut and they don't think they could make a move or whatever. So I had this one particular drill that I wanted to do with these guys because we had a lot of these bigger apartment houses, you know, and something I had learned in the Bronx from guys that went before me about stretching with ropes. I actually wrote an article for Fire Engineering a bunch of years ago about this rope stretch, and I actually used the pictures from that drill for the article. So we did this drill, and there was some reluctance on the part of some guys, but there was one or two guys that really embraced it. You know, they were like, "Wow, this is great. This captain's showing us this cool stuff," you know, and it really worked. You know, well, I don't think we ever employed it. You know, my time there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went back to the Bronx. You know, back to my home, and I remember driving home. I got off shift. And my cell phone rings, you know. I'm like, I look at this guy, KO. You know, he's excited, like jumping. Like, "Cat," he says, "you're not going to believe this." He says, "We just had a fire in an H-type building, and we were third due. And Chief asked us to stretch a line. We used that rope stretch. We got that line up there in like 30 seconds." He said the chief was praising us, like he says he couldn't believe what we had done.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, wow." Imagine that, you know.
Imagine that, right? Yeah.
But you know, it just goes to show that, you know, like the importance, you know, and it's like coming to a place like this where we get to share all this knowledge, you know, and learn all these new techniques. I mean, every time I come, I just go back and my head spins. Like what I really need to do at this point in my life is to have like a little notebook with me.
Yeah.
Like I have, I guess I left it back in the other room or whatever.
Or wear a helmet cam behind your ear.
Yeah. And just record some of this stuff because I'm like, damn, I said, I hope I don't forget this, you know.
Yeah.
Because all the little tidbits that come out, like even just talking to Chris this morning, Chris Norm, about, you know, I guess his forte is the building construction and whatnot. And I put a little of that in my class, but I don't really make it all about building construction, you know. And then, like, I gave him something this morning. Yeah. Like he was like, I could tell because he asked me twice. Right. You know, and he's like, "You got a really good point there." Yeah. You know, and so I tweeted it today. And, you know, so that's
Chris is a smart guy.
Yeah. Yeah. tell
so many levels. Yeah.
But I mean, this is, I think, what the conference is all about,
Right.
You know, like, you know, me now being able to share something with him, I'm sure he's going to run with that now and investigate it, and I'm sure we'll see something written on it.
Yeah.
And then in turn, it'll come back to me, and I'll say, you know, that's cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
That validates what I initially
Right.
thought. You know, my borough commander thought the same thing. You
Yeah.
know, and so this is, to me, what the fire service is all about.
Yeah.
Is the sharing of knowledge. You know, that no one's here to make it.
Right. Well, and it's kind of like being in the firehouse, in a good firehouse, and being here. The learning goes on 24 hours a day. It's not limited to just the classrooms or even the hands-on or, you know, being out on the floor. It's so conversation based, and it's about sharing those stories, and somebody, you know, might have heard that story before, but hearing it another time, or they might be hearing it for the first time, and they have such an immediate and awesome reaction to it because that one little tidbit gave them their aha moment of that moment of clarity. Yeah.
I got a lot out of the story you and Mark told last night about that the fire off the lake. You know, my takeaway was from that. You started telling that story. I said, yeah, we can have wind-driven fires in the basement.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
We sure did.
Yeah.
You should tell that story. I mean, well, that was a great story about the.
No, I don't think we should tell that story.
Yeah, no one wants to hear that story.
Yeah, see, right? Yeah.
No one wants to hear a story about a wind-driven fire in the basement off
Exactly.
Lake Erie.
Right.
No one wants to.
No. Lord jackpot beer in.
Well, I'll start. It's in my secondary area, and actually Tiger's secondary area. It's the area between us. And I believe, the third chief in, and there was really no assignments yet. Things were just getting on. And I walked up to the door at the A-B corner, and there was 2 of your guys, and very well respected, solid guys, always training. They came out, and you could see it in their face, and we can't find 2 of our guys. You know, and this could be it. You know, and it happened so fast. I mean, I pulled up, I got my gear, walked up to the door, and I don't even know what's burning, or there was really no size up yet that got to me. And thank God it was minutes and he popped out from wherever you popped out.
Yeah.
You know, that changed the whole dynamic of that fire, the firefight.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we found ourselves on the second floor. We're searching and couldn't really tell whether we were in an attic space or in a like second floor loft or, you know, study or something like that. And and the staircase was so narrow that, you know, only one of us could fit up it at a time. And I'm up searching on the second floor and my partner's on the stairs. And I, you know, get this little shout out, time to go. And so I came back to the landing.
That perks you up?
Yeah, yeah. And I looked down and, you know, the fire's blowing up the stairs at us. And it was pretty much our only way out because with thermal imager on the second floor, I had zero differentiation. So, you know, I didn't have a whole lot of information to work with. And based on that, we decided, well, our fastest way to get out and the way that we know for sure is to go back through it. And came down the stairs and it was kind of like a scene from a movie or something, but the fire was literally coming out of the heat duct, the floor register. Excuse me. And just blowing right up and blowing up the stairs at us. And fortunately, that was to the left and we went to the right. And there were a lot of conditions related to that fire that were not normal conditions by any stretch, just the construction of the building, you know, 35-mile-an-hour winds coming off of the lake. It was about
10 degrees.
10 degrees, awesome working conditions. And that normally doesn't bother me because I like to go inside where it's warm.
Right.
But we went out the front door and I turned around to actually grab the knob that had been left behind. And I immediately felt heat on my chest and I was on my knees outside the front door, which told me that the floor was no longer there. So, but fortunately it turned out well. But, you know, I think some valuable lessons were learned in that and lessons that have been learned since it and telling of that story.
For sure.
And, you know, again, a lot about.
So we could tell our story from our little one job a year world to Danny here, who, you know, hopefully learn
one of
something.
My takeaway is that, yeah, wind-driven fires do happen other than we had a wind-driven fire in a private dwelling, 2 stories on a it was up on a bit of a hill, and the guys couldn't even get into the front door. The wind was blowing so hard. You know? Yeah. So, you know, I have a funny, one of my guys, we had a fire, and I love him to death. My Brandon Cruz, the 96 engine, and he's a bull, you know. He's just one of these engine guys, you know. And we had a fire in the basement of a 3-story, and we had to go down, and then I guess it was 2 or 3 rooms were going, you know. So you talk about being outside. So he's in there, he's knocking down all the fire, and then he goes right through the back door. He's in the backyard. He's still he's out in the street. He's still
and didn't know.
Twisting the nozzle around. And finally, someone's like, "Brandon, it's out." He's like, the house is now 40 feet behind him. He's still in there, and he's like, you know, like he's putting the fire out. Like, Brandon, okay, enough. You know, you did it. It's out. You know, so, anyway.
Yeah, and the lawn is now watered as well. But thanks for that. Yeah.
You know, just kind of a wrap up. You know, I guess we're kind of getting a little tight on time. But you know, I had this thought as we're talking. As a kid, I went to Catholic school. You know, I remember freshman year of high school, we did a whole thing, a whole year, and we were studying the parables in the Bible. You know, and that's always my favorite part. Like, I love those parables, and
because you can relate to them. They're great stories.
They're
right?
great stories.
Exactly.
They're great stories.
Relatable.
Like
relevant application.
Like any parable, pick one. The Good Samaritan.
Right.
You know, I remember I did my
prodigal son.
The prodigal son. Yeah. But are you the father? Are you the son? Or are you the brother?
Right.
And what part of the prodigal son are you looking at? I'm looking at the father.
Right.
You know, maybe someone else is thinking, well, I'm looking at the son. Well, maybe I'm the brother.
Right.
You know, what's going on with this guy? You know, why is he getting the big
special
treatment, fat calf, and all that other stuff? You know, but you know, he didn't have to tell you to, you know, welcome back your son if he's lost for how many years, if he's gone out and done whatever, and you know, you have to welcome him back. And he told that story. Right. And does anybody remember? They remember the story. Yeah, prodigal son. All you have to say is prodigal son. Yeah. And then you got it, right? Yeah. And or the Good Samaritan, you know, like you have to tell anybody, you know, treat everyone equal, and you know, doesn't matter where they're from, and you know whatnot. So, in a sense, maybe we could think of fire stories as parables. You know, boil it down to the core. Yeah. And
I think they are, because again, it's not just the experience, it's not just the knowledge, it's not just the value of all of that. In telling the story demonstrates the values of the fire service, because it is what we are known for, and it's what people admire firefighters for, and it's what, you know, built into every single fire story you tell is not just the tactics, the strategies, that experience, and that knowledge. It's the history, the heritage, the traditions, and the values of our fire service. And you can't put a price on that. Absolutely. That's why we have to value those stories. And I think a lot of us need just a gentle reminder to get back to being better storytellers.
Yeah, and I think the whole world has always worked that way. I mean, I'm Irish, and
I'm sorry.
I know. It's the cross that I have to carry.
That's right.
I have an Irish friend. I like Irish.
Yeah.
But they're known for storytelling.
For sure.
I mean, everything over in Ireland is
you took
all
a
about
class on it, right?
It's all storytelling. Yeah. It's all storytelling. So,
so use that to your advantage.
Which is a segue right now. I'm on the side. I'm as a hobby. I'm very into like discovering back into my family history. You know, genealogy and testing, and so we do this test. You know, you send your results to this website, and they tell you who's your cousin. So I have this. They rank them on, I guess, how close you are, distance, or whatever. So one of this person came up, and I said, you know, we're very close. I said, how are we related? You know, we're trying to figure out the relation. It says it's on my mom's side. So it turns out that the girl got back to me, and she says, oh, well, you know, my mom's from Ireland, blah, blah, blah. And she says, we're living in Indianapolis right now. I said, Indianapolis? I'm going to be out there for FDIC at the end of April. She goes, oh, Says, would you mind if we met? I said, I would love to meet you. So this is a third cousin somewhat. So at 2 o'clock, I'm meeting them at the Clatter for the first time.
Appropriate. Yeah.
How,
Right.
Another cousin that I've never, another relation.
Wow.
That's fascinating for me. I just, every day I'm getting emails from people like, hey, we're related somehow. Because if you know anything about the Irish, back in the day, they all had 10 kids. And, my great grandmother was one of 15, and my grandmother was one of 9. So, do the math.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
So I'm looking forward to meeting this girl and her mom and her dad. And,
how wonderful.
But, wow. Thanks again to Scott for your help. And all the people here at the Blog Talk Radio. I see the next people waiting to get into the spot. So,
thanks for having me. I've always been told I have a face for radio.
So me too. Well, no, you actually are.
Great. Great. You didn't tell us that part.
So thanks again for coming.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. And we are going to be talking a lot in the next year or so, I can imagine. So,
When you come to Buffalo?
I'm coming up, So anyway, I'll see
Good
you.
Girl for us.
I'm back on May 1st. I'll have to think of something else to talk about now.
But the good news is you have a couple of stories to tell.
fire in a one-story ordinary. Looks like it's about 49, I'm muted. Control, left side, left side, left side. Over to 273, 273. Over the side, you can't keep the tire. Over to 273, 273.
Hello and welcome to the Future Firefighter Fire Engineering Blog Talk Radio Show. I'm honored, humbled to be sitting with Dr. Harry Carter live from FDIC 2018. I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. 3M Scott Fire and Safety is a proud sponsor of the Fire Engineering Trusted Voices Radio Show, and we are live from FDIC 2018. Today is Friday. The show is wrapping up. We have one more day tomorrow, Saturday. Currently, as the show is being recorded, is the NFFF stair climb that's happening over at the Lucas Oil Stadium. And then also tomorrow, they also have the competition, the Scott Firefighter Combat Challenge. So again, I'm honored to have Dr. Harry Carter with us today. Dr. Harry Carter has been coming to FDIC since...
I started in 1977 in Memphis, and I've been teaching since '79. So
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's just great. And have the opportunity to bring Dr. Carter on the show with his experience, his knowledge. And today, our topic today is going to be education in the fire service and why it's important for the future firefighters. So for those future firefighters that are out listening in the audience, please take notes. The information that Dr. Harry Carter is going to be able to give you and help you with as far as your career, to be able to get a position in the fire service, to help you as you go through college, you go through school, certifications, accreditation. We're going to discuss all of those issues. So without further ado, Dr. Harry Carter, if you just please, for the audience, for our listeners, you could just share just a little bit about your background and
I'd be glad to. I started out riding an ambulance when I was a junior in high school back in 1964. 1966, during the Vietnam War, I enlisted in the Air Force and became an Air Force fire protection specialist, crash rescue and structural. And it was my great pleasure to serve in Alaska, the Philippines, and Vietnam during my time in the Air Force. When I got out, I returned to where I lived in Freehold, New Jersey, and went back to riding the ambulance. But not long after, as my then girlfriend, soon to be fiance, and now wife of nearly 46 years, well, when I moved into the village where she grew up, I joined the Adelphia Fire Company. So I've been a career guy off and on for a long time, and I've been a volunteer since 1971.
Wow.
You know, it's after a while, I was lucky to catch the first round of examinations. I went on the railway department. In 1972, I civil service tested to go up to Newark because I got tired of mowing lawns and cleaning windows. And when I went to Newark, I was able to go to fires. And really, we had no windows to clean because they'd all been knocked out and replaced with cardboard. But while I was in Newark, I moved into the educational world. At that point, I had an associate from Brookdale College in business. But I went into the fire science program at Jersey City State College, now the New Jersey City University. And I finished up my bachelor's in 1976. And it's my privilege to say that one of my dear friends and fellow competitors at Jersey City State, you might know, Dr. Dennis O'Neill.
yes, sir, I do know.
Denny and I had two of the first 4 bachelors in fire safety administration ever awarded in New Jersey.
Wow.
He went on for his master's at Fairleigh Dickinson in public administration. Took my master's at Rutgers, political science. He took his doctorate at NYU in education, and I took my doctorate at Capella University in leadership. And I got to tell you, I've achieved a great deal in life through education.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dr. Carter, for sharing that. And thank you for your service to the fire service through FDIC, and then also giving back at the academies and the colleges, and writing several books. Can you please just share a little bit about how the future firefighter could get started into education? One that maybe just is enrolling in classes, maybe thinking about their ACE degree in fire science, fire technology. Can you just speak on that?
Sure. The first thing you have to get into your mind is you want to learn more than they're teaching you at the fire department.
Right.
And to do that, you step right out. You start by going to your local library. You can read many things in the library. You can go to your department academy, your county academy, your state academy, or the National Fire Academy, all offering great educational courses. But you, prior to starting, have to determine what you want to know. If you start out on a journey without a destination, you'll never get to the destination.
Right. You know, when we were talking about it during FDIC, during the big box, the evening, afternoon sessions, Chief Halton, Chief Goldfeder, and Chief Norman, they were discussing topics as far as education, and there's some great resources that are out there. So for the listeners in the audience, U.S. Fire Administration, the National Fire Academy, there's something that we'll discuss in the show called the FESHI model. There's things that are out there to help you, to assist you. And if you're listening in New Jersey, if you're listening in here at the conference in Indiana, or if you're out in California, the same FESHI model is applicable across the country. So, sir, if you don't mind, can you just share a little bit about the FESHI model and the U.S. Fire Administration?
Well, at some point, the folks at Emmitsburg decided that there should be one national model for training firefighters. Now, Dennis O'Neill and I go way, way, way back into the 70s and 80s, talking about the need to create a profession, the fire service as a profession. Not an occupation, which is skills and talents and tasks, but a profession based around a core knowledge. Well, thanks to his efforts as superintendent at the National Fire Academy, committees were formed. And the result of a number of years of labor were the FESHI model. And you follow the FESHI model through your associate degree. And it's a really good way to operate. It covers all of the identified topics which have been found over the years to be necessary. A lot of people don't understand. Knowledge is about a number of things, but the two primary are content. What are you learning? And critical thinking. Are you learning how to think? Many people don't understand thinking is a process. Critical thinking is taking facts, weighing facts, evaluating facts, and making your conclusion as to how you wish to proceed. Well, that working my way from my associate to my two bachelors, my masters, my two doctorates, thinking had to play a part of it. The first question in thinking your way through this is, why? Why do I want an education? If you can't come up with a good, reasonable answer to the question why, it's probably a journey you don't need to take or shouldn't take. The other night at supper over at Prime, I was helping a guy from Massachusetts through the process. And he says, I came late to the educational table, raising kids and all that. I got my bachelor's and master's, I'm teaching college, but I'm thinking about a doctorate. Should I go for a doctorate? And I asked him a simple question. Why? Why do you think you need a doctorate? Well, then he gave me logical conclusions. He wants to do teaching in a particular area. He wanted to get a doctorate in education, an EDD. And when he told me he wanted to do religious studies, because he teaches at a Catholic university, I said, well, a PhD would be better because you could be more resource-oriented rather than function-oriented in a doctorate in education. Dennis's EDD, when he earned that, he created an entire program to implement fire prevention in New Jersey. And today we still use the same model he created 30 years ago.
Wow.
So education is critical. I mean, in what we do, when I explain to people my model for learning in the fire service, you're taught at the academy what to do. You go to the firehouse, and you practice and you drill on what to do. You go to real emergencies, you do something, it works, it doesn't work, you come back, you use your feedback, and you go back to training again. It's a circle, it's a cycle, but injecting education makes the circle larger.
Right.
You're bringing more facts in. And pulling up in front of a burning building in Newark, which I did with great frequency back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I liked having facts. For the younger people, you probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about when I speak of the Brady overlays. These were the kind of things created by George Post, who the ISFSI honors with the George Post Instructor of the Year Award, that he created for the Brady Corporation. And an overlay went on an overlay projector. And it was highly immobile. It was just things on a sheet of acetate. But there were multiple sheets. The basic street, the building, your trucks arrive, what do you see, what do you do? Well, in my mind, reading, learning, gathering knowledge creates overlays in your brain so that when you turn into the block where that emergency is, whether it's a fire or an accident or whatever, your mind can flip through the overlays, placing them in front of your mind's eye what to do. And I know that's the way it worked for me in Newark. Because when you turn the block and you have one city block on fire, what do you do?
Right.
Well, I go back to my education, studied the Chelsea conflagration, studied the number of conflagrations. In a major fire, the key is to cut it off. How did I know that? I learned it as part of my education. You confine it, you herd it in, and eventually all fires go out.
Right.
But if you don't do it correctly, the fire gets much larger before it goes out.
Right. And that's awesome. In our previous shows, we discussed the blend in the fire service, the recruit firefighter, entry-level firefighter. It takes a blend. The blend is education, is definitely a major component. Time and grade. We talk about seat time. We talk about certifications. The National Fire Academy has excellent programs as far as national level training through certifications. We're at the Fire Department Instructors Conference, 217 classes this year, amongst hot classes, hands-on training Monday and Tuesday in the pre-conference section. And then I've had the pleasure of sitting in many classes. James Johnson, he has another show that he does through Fire Engineering, Blog Talk Radio. Excellent class on building construction. Well, building construction just happens to be one of those FESHI classes, a semester-long class just on building construction. I think that's important for our recruit firefighters. Sacramento Fire Department, for example, out in California, in their firefighter academy, their entry-level firefighter academy, they have you build a house in their academy. It's a mini, smaller house to scale. However, you know what rafters are, you know what the spacing in between studs, you know the purlins and the beams, you know what the load is of the walls and the roof. And that's the importance of bringing it all together. So to talk about the blend, the certifications, the education, the time and grade, the seat time, once you get to that point in your studies, it might be year one or it might be year two when it starts coming together. And you can kind of see that slide tray develop. And we talk about the slide tray. And as you get that seat time, you get that experience, then you can start getting that prime decision recognition. You can start seeing calls that you've been on before. So Dr. Carter, if you could just share for those young listeners that are out there in the audience that might not be familiar with what a slide tray is, if you could just share with them what that is and why that's important.
Back in the day, well, I'll take you beyond that, go back beyond that. There was a time when it was very difficult to create AV assistants. One of the first things I learned as I started at the FDIC was how to create audiovisual things to use. And one of the greatest inventions in the world was the machine that I used at the National Guard when I was State Fire Marshal in Jersey for the Guard, where you could create slides by sticking letters on a sheet and shooting an overhead picture of it. And then over time, I must have had, before I started unloading them, 60 or 70 trays of slides. And each of the slides was a different aspect of the course you wanted to teach, similar to the overlays, where each was a different part of the topic you wished to teach.
Right.
And after a while, I noted that people who showed up with slide trays were considered to be, forgive me for this, old farts who were not technologically competent. And that's when I began creating PowerPoint. Now, one of the things I had well, he's not my son-in-law, he was a boyfriend for my older daughter years ago. He took a lot of my slides and took photos and injected them into my programs. But a lot of my knowledge goes back to days when you just put slides up on the screen. Going back to your talk about the new guy coming up, if you think about it, each baby that's born comes in with a completely blank slate. And over the years, different people write on that slate. Your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles. You go into school, your teachers write on it. And then, of course, you got your friends in class scribble all over whatever everybody else is writing. Well, so it is in the fire service. Nobody arrives at the front door of their first day of work at the academy with any consequences, any knowledge. The average citizen does not know what they're about to enter. Well, I had the 4 years in the Air Force. I had Philadelphia. I had Broadway when I went to Newark. There were no great surprises. Yet, of course, I went through the academy. And the knowledge just kept growing. Back then, we had the privilege or the problem of a lot of working fires. The city of Newark is an old city on the river in Jersey. And the deteriorated housing stock led to multiple fires. I had a fire most every day when I went to work at 11 engine, and then I made captain and went over to 15 engine. You pretty much knew if you didn't get a fire during the day, you were going to get one at night. And you learned what worked, what didn't work. So you had your formal education in college, and you had your informal education in the living of your daily life as a firefighter. Now, one of the problems we face today is that our efforts at prevention have been successful.
Yes.
Really, there are, in total, less fires than there were. But that's a good thing for the people that own buildings and live in buildings. But for people who need to learn their position, that makes it terribly important to train harder at the fire station.
Right.
A lot of people don't do that. Yeah. I told you about my own volunteer department in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
When I was chief back in '91, I pushed training. And now we send 6 people to FDIC every year. And we hold anywhere from 35 to 40 drills a year. And we are a regional resource. I was talking about this in my class yesterday on problem solving. And after class, one of the students came up and he showed me a picture on his phone, and it was of 2 of our Philadelphia firefighters. And he says, "Do you know this guy?" I said, "Yeah, that's our Lieutenant Steve." And he says, "Boy, those guys from Philadelphia are good." And I said, "Well, what did I say during class? Our emphasis on training. I am 70 years old, but to remain active, I must attend 6 drills a year minimum."
Right.
So I go in and I watch. Now, of course, I'm not going to climb a ladder. I will watch you climb a ladder. I drive the fire truck, but I let the younger guys drive. I've served my time, but I want to be there with my arm around the shoulder of the new guy coming through the door, who has no concept of the world he or she is about to enter. I say he or she. My daughter's been in the fire company since she started as a junior when she's 14.
Right.
Now she's secretary of the fire company, and she's only 3 years away from life membership. How old does that make me feel? But again, no matter who you are in the Philadelphia Fire Company, if you want to stay active, you must participate actively in training.
Right, and that's a great point. So you brought up another great component of the FESHI program, and that's fire prevention. So this week we've had several classes geared towards fire prevention, and we know that we have a fire problem from America birding, and fast forward to today, the importance of sprinklers and community risk reduction, public education, public information officers, It's very important. So with the FSG model, we actually have 2 classes. We have fire protection equipment and systems, which is very important if you're doing engine company inspections. So if you're that new guy or gal that just got out of the recruit academy, you're out of the fire academy, you could take a semester-long class and learn what a fire department connection is, what an outside screw and yoke is, what a post indicator valve is, what is a wet system, what is a dry system, what is a wet hydrant, a dry hydrant. You can learn all those different things in that class. Another class that you can take is fire prevention. And it's very important to learn about some of these catastrophic fatal fires. Recently, we just had the 15-year anniversary of Rhode Island of the Station nightclub fire. And
that was a significant fire.
Yeah.
For one fact, it was the first major fire of that type where the video of the building burning and the people running around inside was ever available to be released. But when I saw the video on station, I immediately thought of the Natchez Dance Club fire in 1940 down in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Only back then there were no videos.
Right.
There were just a lot of deceased citizens laying in the gutter.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing at all.
No. And also Coconut Grove. You know, we could talk about Coconut Grove. We could talk about the Peshtigo fire, the Great Chicago fire.
Peshtigo is one of the most overlooked fires in the history of the United States because it was caught in the shadow of the Chicago fire. But that was a city built of wood, wooden buildings, wooden sidewalks. They even had sawdust in the streets to keep the dust down.
Yeah.
Well, when it took off, it was a very windy day, and it just destroyed the city and killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, it's often mentioned as the lost fire because it's forgotten. And we can also talk about the Iroquois Theater fire, you know, and that's another prime example. So
one of the great stories of the Iroquois fire was Eddie Foy, the vaudeville comedian. When the crowd was beginning to panic, he got up on the stage and began singing to calm the crowd. In spite of his efforts, 602 people still died. But that was at the time, it was built as a fireproof theater.
Right, yeah.
Nothing is fireproof. You can burn concrete if you try hard enough.
Right, and when you go through all these classes in your fire science, fire technology program, and the FSG model, you can learn about some of these catastrophic fires. And as an instructor, as a teacher educating college students, I want them to see the importance of the why. We discussed the why.
Why is the biggest question.
And so we looked at the block exits. We look at egress. We look at basements. We look at candles. We look at some of the causations, the reasons, the point of origin, why some of these fatal fires happen. And a lot of it brings us to the importance of sprinklers, fire sprinklers. We just had another tragic fire in California, in Oakland, the Ghost Ship fire.
That was a terrible fire.
And one of my instructors, 10 years ago, one of my first instructors, Lieutenant George Freeland from Oakland, he was one of the first ones that was on that incident. And so that brings us to another point. We can talk also about firefighter safety and survival. So that's another component of the FSG model. In firefighter safety and survival, we go through the 16 life safety initiatives from the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation.
I was blessed to be at the Tampa meeting in 2004 when we created those.
Yep. Yeah.
It was, well, my personal emphasis in the middle of all those is the highway safety issue for Cumberland Valley. But
yeah,
a funny story. Can I tell a funny story about?
Please
here we are in the midst of talking about safety, health, and fitness. And after the first break, we go out, and what did they have for refreshments? Twinkies, ding, ho-hos, all of this.
Yeah.
No fruit, no vegetables.
Yeah.
Now, I just simply laughed and went, a cup of coffee and went back in. But the protests led to, from then on out, you had a range for the healthy people and the fat people.
Right.
But we covered it all. And that's the use of problem-solving feedback.
Right.
We have a problem. We're talking health and safety, and you're feeding me crap.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so thank you for sharing that story.
Well, it's a critical story.
That brings up an excellent point. We've had a lot of classes this week in firefighter functional fitness. Good friends of mine, Chief Danny Sheridan and Lieutenant Jim Moss, they taught 2 classes. They actually taught a hot class, and they also taught a lecture class, a 90-minute class on the culture of fitness right now in the fire service. We have to look at nutrition. We have to look at diet. We have to look at exercise.
You're taking me into that area of my life where I've never done well. I do not stand as a tribute to exercise and nutrition in the American Fire Service. However, I offer myself as what happens when you don't.
Right.
You reach a certain age and your body begins telling you, you know, you really should have done a little bit more when you were a lot younger. So I offer that to our audience. If you're in your 20s, stay active. Because right now, you saw me, I'm having trouble walking because of my arthritis. Would you believe that up until 2003, I was a sousaphone player in a marching band?
Right.
We would do 2, 3, 4, 5-mile parades. And I was marching right along. When I was a younger man, I dropped my car off at my repair shop in Freehold and walk 4 miles home and think nothing of it.
Right.
Now, when I leave this video with you and walk back to the Hyatt, I'll be walking in pretty much 100-yard stretches.
Right.
Hopefully, over the next few months, I will do what I've promised the people here I will do. I will walk further and a little bit further and a little bit further so that next year I won't have these problems. But it's an educational process, and I didn't pay attention. And I offer that to the younger people.
Right.
Pay attention.
And that's a good and excellent point. When you get through the academy, some academies are 16 weeks, some academies are 20 weeks. Heck, if you're in Japan, your academy is going to be 2 years.
That's correct.
You know, and so it depends on your academy. But the key is when you pass probation, you get your seat, you earn your seat, get your name on your turnout, you get a badge, you get sworn in, and you're taking an oath. And that oath is to be a humble public servant and to take care of yourself. In order to take care of the public, you have to first take care of yourself. Mrs. Smith, right? Mrs. Smith. We have to take care of Mrs. Smith, and we're not able to take care of Mrs. Smith if we can't take care of ourselves.
Well, so that was one of the great privileges in my life. Alan Brunacini had me as one of the reviewers on a number of his books. And when you are in the presence of a brilliant thinker, you're often stunned silent with your admiration for him. And one of the great sorrows in my life is he's gone. And an adjacent sorrow, I lost a book he signed. Thank you, Harry. Just not paying attention. You run through life and you don't pay attention.
Yeah.
Is that book in my office? You wouldn't believe my office with thousands of books on all of the walls.
I've seen pictures. Yeah.
You've seen pictures.
Yeah.
But some things I can find in a thrice. Other things I will spend an afternoon and my search will come up fruitless.
Right. Yeah.
But the key is I don't have to go out and borrow anything. If I want to study something, I go in and look at the books on my shelf.
You got the resource. That's another perfect segue. Keep your books, you know, and I've kept all my books in the past 12 years. And one of my first books was from Chief Brunacini and Chief Bruno. And excellent books out there. Customer Service is an excellent essentials of customer service. Fire Command.
His Fire Command book. It was one that I studied for my deputy's exam. And one of his really important chapters was the 18 attributes of an effective fire ground commander. Mm-hmm. And I memorized them alphabetically, not chronologically, right? A, B, B, D, D, C, D. So when I went in to take my exam, I was talking faster than the examiner could write because I knew. But in the back of that book were his statements on life. And one of the things that has never left me, don't hang around with a chief whose nickname is Burn 'em down Burns, because you're going to go to fires. I mean, literally, this is the man.
Right.
I met him on a bus in 1976 in Cincinnati. He laid out everything in 2 hours at lunch in 1976 that he ended up doing over the rest of his life.
Right.
He knew what he wanted to do. than the next year he made chief, and he did it. What better testament for a person in this world? They know what they want to do, and they take the steps necessary to achieve what they wish to do.
Yep, and this show and this conference this year is in memory of Chief Brunacini, and we definitely miss him. However, for those that are listening out in the audience, and Dr. Carter, Chief Rubin, I think Chief Varner showed up yesterday.
Yeah, I met Bruce out in the hall.
Yeah,
Varner,
yeah. So there's several that are keeping Chief Bruno's vision, his passion.
Well, Bruce Varner worked as his assistant.
Yep. Yeah, and I read a great story about how he used to call Mrs. Bruno Mom, and how he used to eat dinner over at their house. And Bee Shifter, there was a great article in Bee Shifter that came out, and it was all the different stories regarding Chief Bruno. So for those listeners that are listening in the audience,
family.
Yeah, he's a family, and so he also embraced education.
Oh,
he embraced building construction. He embraced command.
He was out. Embrace. I accept it. More than that, he was out front.
Oh yeah,
he was a leader, a pioneer. He set the path.
A forward thinker.
Exactly.
Very progressive, and I believe he set the example for all of us. So I'm very honored to bring Dr. Harry Carter on the show. And if you're in the audience and if you're listening, please get essentials of customer service and fire command, and if you can, take classes from Chief Varner and take classes from Chief Rubin, and it's up to all of us to keep Chief Brunacini's mission, vision, his values. We have to take care of Mrs. Smith.
You must share.
Yes.
If you know and you don't tell, you're not a good person.
Right.
If you're the sponge that soaks up knowledge, occasionally you have to squeeze the sponge and let it out for people to get.
Right.
I've been with people over the years. They went to every seminar, every session, every class. Well, when they got back to the firehouse, they never told anybody anything.
Right. Well, that's a perfect segue. So let's talk about FDIC. We're here, and we have all these training opportunities. Why should the new recruit, why should the entry-level firefighter just got off probation, why should they come here?
You need to join the family. There are courses. Bobby and Diane provide courses at all levels. I mean, there are extremely basic courses. A lot of the hot courses are the perfect follow-up to your academy training. As I said earlier, Adelphia sends 6 people every year, and they've done so for the last 20 years. And they come back, and they're better firefighters. And of course, one of the things we as the Board of Fire Commissioners who pay the freight say, each of you has to teach a drill during the year based upon what you learn at FDIC. And one of the things one of our ex-chiefs learned was how to build a roof prop. Well, we had, in the old days, we had 3 gigantic gas cylinders out back because we didn't have in-the-street gas. When we got in-the-street gas, we got rid of the cylinders. We had this giant area. Well, that giant area now has walls, Tyvek, siding, and a roof with a giant hole in it with slots to hold the plywood so we can do continuing roof cuts.
Awesome.
Ladder raises and roof cuts, and we don't have to go anywhere but our own firehouse.
Right.
And we learned it at FDIC.
That's awesome. And so I want to definitely thank Chief Bobby Halton and the whole fire engineering family, Pinwell family, for this conference. And I know it takes many hands. I know there's a lot that we don't see. There's a lot of things that happen logistically behind the scenes to make this happen. And this is my 5th national conference, and I'll share a little story about myself. I've been in the fire service for 12 years, and I never came to a national conference. In 10 years, I stayed in my own area, my own department, my own state, and I went to my first national conference, and I really feel like that I missed out in those 10 years. And so I'm kicking myself now. And so now I have the bug, and you have to be here. This experience.
Better late to the table than never.
This experience is something that you have to come. I've had some excellent classes. Excellent
more than
classes.
It's a battery recharge.
Right.
You have that swamp that you live in every day. I go, I do, I come home. I go, I do, I come home.
Right.
If you come to FDIC to learn, you're going to be surrounded by people who are charged up. I can remember many years I'd come down to Memphis or Cincinnati, and it would really, truly be a battery recharge.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd return to the city of Newark all wound up and ready to attack the world. And I ended up back at work where I always was, and it was very frustrating.
Right.
But I was always, in my mind, a better person for what I had learned at FDIC.
Right.
And then you get to the point where it becomes more important to share. I mean, over the years in my life, I've set goals for myself at age 40, 50, 60. Now that I'm 70, here I am almost 71, and I haven't set out my goals for my 70s. When I was 40, I said I want to be a nationally known expert by 50. Got that. When I was 50, I wrote a whole list of things. Leave Newark because I was about to retire, do this, active in the Masons, active in my church, more band music, all of it. I have that faded sheet that I wrote on the front porch, military white, green line paper. I checked every one. I achieved all of them. Turned 60, I went into my decade of sharing. And my pastor helped me with this because one of the things I wanted to do was learn more about my faith. How do you do that?
Right.
You get a mentor.
Right.
My pastor was my mentor. At some point, he considered me to have learned my lessons, and I went on the church board.
Right.
And I'd like to say I was the token sinner on the church board because these people were really religious, and I'm like, okay, I believe in all this stuff, but I make a lot of mistakes in life. I'm a sinner. I want you to know I'm a sinner. But anyway, here I am at the decade of my 70s, and I'm starting to see it's forming up.
Right.
As I sit here talking with you, Chris, I've got to talk about sharing. It's sharing at the next level. Because each of us, as we sit here today, is a lending library. I have a lot of books up here. You have books up there.
Right.
Well, when you die, like when Bruno died, the doors to the library slam shut.
Right.
And you can only share when you can talk, look, and listen.
Right.
That's critical.
And that's an important point. And coming to these conferences, FDIC, you're one of my mentors, and I'm humbled and honored that I get to sit next to you and on this show share a conversation.
Well, write that down so I can take it home with my wife.
And that's the other important thing about coming to FDIC is all the mentors. You discussed the family, being able to have accessibility. And all the classes that I've attended, the instructor has been more than willing to stay after the class and share their contact information, their phone number, their email. They're accessible, and they want to genuinely help you.
Well, that's something that Bobby and Diane and Virginia McGoldie pay attention to. There are people who are one and done as instructors at FDIC because the first mistake they made, they touted themselves as though they were a product. I'm selling Harry, and I want to go out, and I want to teach you, and I want you to pay me money to teach you. Wrong. The second one was they were not approachable. They didn't help the students. They did their gig, and when people tried to come up, I got to go somewhere. I got to put my career and leave. That's not how it works. The people that I look to as my mentors over the years, not only did we stay after class, we repaired to A, the coffee shop, or B, the gin mill.
Right.
And we traded ideas. One of the guys that I dearly loved, long gone, late Bill Clark, retired out of New York City as a battalion chief,
Right.
Director of training in Wisconsin, director of training in Florida. He worked for Union Carbide. He retired to St. Petersburg, Florida.
Right.
Now, he was still $1,000 a day consultant up to when he died. But his wife, Ellen, told a number of us that he said to her one day, a couple weeks before he passed, that, I got to catch up to all these young whippersnappers. Oh, and I think I'm going to get a computer. I think it's time. Well, he was gone in a couple of weeks. But he was always a forward thinker.
Right. Yeah.
I studied his book when I was promoted to captain. When he wrote the second edition, I was one of his helpers.
Wow.
When people bring you along the thrill of the journey,
Right.
I mean, we could probably put a 2-day class together on the thrill of the journey.
Yeah, and that's a great point. This is a journey.
It is.
And so as we wrap up this show, this is a journey. If we really think about it, through the Bessie model, the 6 classes, we've discussed a little bit of them this show. Next show, we're going to invite Chief Dan Sheridan and Lieutenant Jim Moss. So we're going to continue the fitness, the health, the safety, cancer. We have a problem with cancer in the fire service. We have line of duty deaths. We have suicides. We have this mental health. We discussed mental health and
one of my jobs in the city of Newark for the last 15 years, I was the voice of command at all line of duty deaths. Mm-hmm. And boy, it strikes you. And the thought in my mind is every time someone died, we'd march out to the cemetery with the bagpipes and the flags. And every time we came back with one less person.
Yeah.
That's what fixed safety and all that in my mind. One of my great achievements in Newark, no one died on my watch when I was a fireman, captain, or chief. Did people get hurt? Oh, we all got hurt because firefighting back in my early days, I wasn't anything more than a resource. Let's throw 3 firemen at that fire and see if it goes out. We don't do that anymore. Why? Because we learned that was wrong.
And it's important. You know, I'd be remiss not to mention that we hear bagpipes in the background, and we have several thousands that are here climbing to remember our brothers that died in the FDNY, September 11th, and the stair climb. There's a lot of events that you can do locally. We have local stair climbs that you can do. You can come out here to FDIC, do the stair climb. We had the Courage and Valor 5K last night. Chief Halton runs in that, and several of my friends, they participate in that. And I think the person that won, ran 3 miles in 17 minutes. And
I like watching things like that on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't sweat as much when I watch it on Facebook.
But there's a lot of events that are out here. Last night I was at the Stop, Drop, Rock, and Roll with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I'm a regional coordinator for the Everyone Goes Home program for Region 9, California, Hawaii, Nevada, and Arizona. There's great programs and great events, and there's an experience. This is a whole experience. So please, we talked about goals. We talked about goal setting and your plan. For those of you that are listening and that are out in the audience, make the goal, make the plan to come here to FDIC next year. And if you need help, if you need suggestions, if you need coaching or mentoring, I know Dr. Carter has mentored me over the years. Please reach out. Please ask us. And there's programs that are available. Honeywell, they brought 20 new instructors.
Yes, they did.
20 new instructors.
I was impressed by that.
So several of my friends got to teach their first classes, and this was their second year. Last year was their first year coming here, and Honeywell brought them back, and they're instructors this year. Great programs. Great programs. So again, we want to thank our sponsors, 3M Scott Fire and Safety. They're a proud sponsor of the Fire Engineering Trusted Voices radio show.
God bless Scott Airpacks. I've been wearing them for over 30 years.
Yes, I love Scott's. I've used Scott's in the past, and I love how easy they are to use, and the operability and the usability. I would like to thank Chief Bobby Halton for mentoring me and giving me the opportunity to have this show. And I would love to thank all of the many hands, all of the people behind the scenes that don't get the credit.
That's correct.
That make this event happen. Because let's be honest, Chief Halton, he's everywhere, but unfortunately he can't do this by himself.
No.
It takes a team. No. So the Pinwell, the fire engineering family, thank you for this opportunity. And this has been one of my best FDIC experiences. And even though we're at Friday and tomorrow is the last day, I'm all ready for next year. I want to come back next year. So my challenge to everyone that's listening in the audience is you have to go to these conferences. You have to get your batteries recharged. You have to go back to your department, your city, your agency, your jurisdiction, your state, and you have to pass on the information. You have to share the knowledge.
Regardless of whether it hurts when people laugh at you, revile you, keep sharing.
Yes.
I often wondered why I was in trouble so much.
Yeah.
Then it came to me one day in a flash. There's a fraction of life. It is called mistakes. The less you do, the smaller that number is.
Right.
Well, I was always doing something everywhere, so I was always in the boss's office getting yelled at. But once I understood why, it was fun to get yelled at.
Yeah.
It really was.
Well, I'd like to congratulate Paul Combs on his George Post Instructor of the Year Award through the ISFSI. Congratulations, Paul. And also Deputy Chief Billy Goldfeder on his Lifetime Achievement Award. And as we talk about passing it on, right? If you're listening in the show, that's an excellent book through Fire Engineering Books. Pass it on.
I wrote one of the chapters in the first one.
Yeah, you autographed it for me.
Yeah.
So
that was fun. Billy creates fun things and you learn.
Yes, yeah. And so approachability, Chief Goldfeder brought all 6 of his grandkids with him.
His wife actually saved my life when we were speaking in Nova Scotia back in 2008. Billy G and I decided we were going to relive our youth and march with the Bridgewater, Nova Scotia Fire Department Marching Band, the oldest marching band in Canada.
Wow.
He was playing the drums, and I had a tuba up in the front row. Well, anybody knows Nova Scotia along the coastline, you start by the harbor to go to the hill that takes you the hill, that takes you up the hill. Well, when the band comes to a certain point, there I am, head in a garbage can, growing up. Terry comes around the corner, sees me. Well, she's paramedic. She says, "You're not good." Calls an ambulance. Boom. They call my wife. My wife was standing with my sister, and the band comes around the corner, and there's this giant spot in the front where I should have been. Wow. So now my wife, she saved my life and convinced me I should have exercised. Well, until I had a round of bronchitis this year, I was doing a half mile in the pool at the fitness center. Wow. So I really was in shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you lose fitness, it's tough to get back. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's a family. And,
it's really a family. Even
the spouses, the children, and the grandchildren. Bring your family. Bring your spouses. Bring your children. There's this event. There's things to do for everybody.
My daughter's been here as a firefighter.
So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Dr. Carter.
You're quite welcome. It's my pleasure.
And thank you, Fire Engineering, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
There's a car with my name in it.
About 49, 125. Unusual. Squad 5, squad 5. Over the 273, 273. Over the Tidy 18, 18 battalion. With the 273, 273.
Well, good afternoon. Mike Dugan here with, of course, my trusted partner, Mike Galliano, and we are going to have a very, very lovely guest with us today, his beautiful bride, Ann. And I would like to just say thank you to 3M Scott Fire and Safety for sponsoring the Fire Engineering Trusted Voices radio show live from FDIC 2018. We happen to be the last show on the radio this year from FDIC, Michael, and it's been an amazing FDIC so far. So I taught a workshop on my own for 4 hours on company drills and how to do an effective company drill. And then I had the honor, of course, of teaching with you a 4-hour This House Rocks Firehouse Excellence class. And then we did a 1 hour and 45 This House Rocks class, which was great. I think we had about 400 people in attendance at that one. And then I did a 1 hour 45 with our friend Phil Powell from Australia on the aluminum composite. It's what's inside that matters. And I also did one with John Walters on the need of firefighters getting help and finding help when they're having issues dealing with stuff in the fire service. So tell me about your class.
It's tough being a talented guy, man.
Yeah,
You know, everybody wants you to do stuff all the time, including me.
I'm
So-
exhausted. I'm exhausted.
And you have a booth signing time too,
I
right?
had a booth signing time at FARS Rescue Air. I had a booth signing time where I signed my DVD, and I also went there and saw some of the boys there. Had a great time with them. Michael happened to bring his guys from Seattle, and I can understand why he's so proud of that crew because those guys were amazing. They were good people.
Oh, boy. So we're the caboose. We're the back end of the train here, bringing up the rear.
Best for last.
Huh? Best
Save
for
the best
last?
for last.
Yeah, you sweet talker. Yeah. Yeah, so just as always, a wonderful time, and it's tired, but it's very good tired, getting to catch up with good friends and just meet firefighters from all over the place, and everybody's so cool, and people are trying to do such a good job and coming to get better at the job, and it's humbling and it's an honor, and I just can't express to you enough how much you would enjoy coming to this show and meeting like-minded firefighters. And taking some of that energy and that passion back to your own department, along with, you heard 5 classes from one of the iconic guys who's ever wore the badge. How much stuff could you learn from this guy? So I also did a few classes. You mentioned a couple that I was involved in, and did a Art of Go No Go for in one of the big rooms, which was a blast. Had my wife and 3 of my guys from my truck in the front row, which was a pretty incredible honor. And actually got to have the crowd cheer for them, which was really neat. I told the company officers, I said, wouldn't you love to bring your crew to FDIC and just have a group of firefighters cheer for them? And everybody was very cool about it. My guys stood up, and they gave them the round of applause that they really deserve. They're certainly bedrock and foundational to my joy for the fire service. And then, one of the coolest things that happened, I got to watch my partner, my soulmate, I got to watch her elevate. And she did a class on the challenges of firefighter marriage, which I guess I'm the subject of that discussion, the challenges of being married to a firefighter. And she published her first book here at FDIC, and it has been such an absolute privilege and joy to watch, a line stretched across the convention floor to get her to sign her book, and in the hopes that some insight for how we've made it through 30 plus years of being married and in the fire service and had a happy and mutually beneficial marriage. Just some of the things that we've done, and in hopes that others can have that too, and get to kind of chop away at this divorce rate a little bit, kind of the unhappy marriages that are going on. So That's been, you know, and then there's probably about 27 other things I could tell you, but that would probably be boring. We have a lovely guest here, so let's get to that. Tell us about FDIC and just kind of some initial thoughts about what's so cool about it from your perspective. Because you've been tagging along, right? And now you're like the belle of the ball, you're the rock star, you know. We read a couple of the evals, it's pretty funny. They said, this is the best class I've ever taken. And then in parentheses, they put one of my classes, it used to be da-da-da-da-da. So I took a picture of that so we can keep that for all time. So pretty good. So, you know, share. I mean, people are going to be watching that have never been to FDIC and are thinking about it. You know, what about FDIC do you enjoy so much?
Oh boy, I've had a couple firefighters ask me, how can I get my spouse to love the fire service? I said, well, this is a great place to start. Bring them to FDIC because the vibe here is so exciting. It's so inclusive. Everybody here is not in competition. Everybody here is supportive. For me, a spouse to be teaching a class, writing a book, you know, that's just kind of almost unreal. But the reason that I even have any confidence to do that is because of the vibe here, and it's everybody roots for you, cheers you on, makes you feel welcome, and everybody here loves the fire service. So that is the whole gist of this conference, is falling in love again with what's so awesome about this job, and you kind of get to escape from your own maybe internal conflict or a little bit going on at home, and just be reminded once again, this is a family, this is an honorable job, it has meaning, it, you know, save lives, basically save lives for a living, and it's just kind of a shot in the arm. So that's what and it's a shot in the arm for the spouse too, because we get to see, you know, all this stuff that makes you better, makes you safer. When I first came, I remember sitting in on your air management class and hearing a firefighter run out of air, and I was just sobbing, and it freaked me out.
Terrified in the front row. It's like, oh my gosh, you're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. And I look around at other firefighters, tears, you know, we all care about our firefighters and we all care about each other. And at first I thought, oh, this is scary, I can't do this. But then as you go on in the classes and you see, oh, well, we're here to address this. And so this doesn't happen again. And you all care about each other and you want to save lives. And so as a spouse, it ended up being encouraging, not discouraging, that you kind of have to look at what's going on. You can't deny it. Live in a bubble. You have to look at it and say, oh no, let's make it better. And that's what kind of brought me on board, is that's what these are all about, is saving our firefighters and keeping them safe. So that's been really cool. Helps me sleep a little better at night knowing these dangers are being addressed for him and for you too.
Well, the result that came out of her going to classes and coming here and meeting some of my friends, me going to work in an administrative job in the training division at my big fire department, that, you know, 1,000+ members, there are people you go your whole career that you don't even meet. There's so many. But because I was down at training division and everybody rotates through there to get drilled, I was coming in contact with a broad swath of the Seattle Fire Department. And it was amazing how many people I knew from my recruit class, friends I had, people I'd worked with, even people I didn't know but knew I was down there, were running into marital troubles. And boy, it just seemed like a steady drumbeat every week. I'm coming across someone else who is either getting divorced, is separated, or you can tell by the way they're speaking that it's just a matter of time before those things are true. And it hit me really hard. I remember coming home to her and just almost feeling despondent about it, and you know, just asking, you know, does anyone ever make it anymore? Is it possible to do this and to make it in the marriage world? And just be careful what you ask. I asked her, what do you think it is? Is there something different about us as firefighters that would, you know, cause us to have trouble in our marriage? And the answer to the question was
yes.
Yes, there is.
He asked me to write it down, you know, some things that I'd observed over the years. We've been married again, like he said, almost 25 years at that point. And is there something tough about living with a firefighter, as, you know, from the perspective of a spouse? And yeah, I got some ideas. He said, well, write them down for me. And he was expecting me to hand him a little, you know, Post-it note with a line or two, you know, how hard can it be? And, you know, a pencil. And I handed him a 10-page typed annotated document, and he was just, whoa, I'm surprised by that. So I put a lot of thought into it.
And I'm really messed up.
He's my muse, bless his heart. But he asked, and it comes from a love of firefighters, because awesome people, kind of like with the elevated cancer rates, not only is it shocking just in general, but firefighters on average are healthier than the general population. So they shouldn't be getting cancer at higher rates, but lower rates because of their fitness and health. And the same with marriage. I kind of feel the same way. These are better than average people. These are people that serve and sacrifice and represent the best of humanity. By the same token, I believe their marriages should be even healthier for that. And to have it be kind of otherwise, the rates seem to be a little higher. It's the same correlation of shocking. And plus, it's such a high stress job. You need the support of family even more so than like a regular profession. So that's what inspired this. I believe you really need the strong marriage. You need at least one person in your life on your side to help you cope with danger and trauma and sleep deprivation. And so these are all the things I wrote down, and then just how I've addressed it, noticing some behavioral changes in my buddy here, who's always just the coolest, sweetest guy in the world. When he's a little bit off, I know there's something going on, because that's not normal for him. And I was able to make that connection that it is job related, and that's what kind of got it going.
Well, that there's a way to navigate it.
Yeah.
You know, that we actually did some things that we never identified before, but we tried to really narrow down. And she did a great job of kind of honing in on, here's a few things that are doable for anybody, because we're, you know, the average people. We're not any special people. The things that you can do to actually have a shot at making it through some of this stuff. It's pretty critical.
Yeah, and for any marriage to survive, it really stems on communication. You need to be able to talk. Any couple.
Yeah.
And so I really go into the communication aspect of it for firefighter couples. And I believe there are basically 5 essential conversations every firefighter couple should have, because nobody wants a big, huge textbook on marriage. So I tried to keep it simple and geared to firefighter marriages, and go through those 5 conversations based on danger, trauma, 24-hour sleep, and all that stuff. So keep it simple, have the conversation. It's not a fix-all, cure-all, because everybody's different. But if you can have those conversations, you can kind of find your own specific solutions, give and take, whether it's a male firefighter, female firefighter, both of you are firefighters. It's just a conversation. So
A couple of kids who had kids young had a couple boys,
yeah,
which is one type of scenario, or a couple of kids who had a couple of girls. I mean, the job impacted you at home, right?
Oh,
Mike, with your kids.
Absolutely. I mean, I still remember, I have a letter, I'd have to find it somewhere, but all my daughter wanted for Christmas was Daddy home, because I was working night tours. We weren't allowed to do 24s at Christmas time. And I worked the 23rd night and the 24th night. And they were going to order captains to work. And I was the 5th senior captain. And we had a rule, you never go sick on Christmas. I was the 5th senior captain, so I was going to slide. And all of a sudden, I got a call Christmas Eve, 3 o'clock in the afternoon at home, that I'm going to work the next day. And my wife is like, but you told me nobody ever goes sick. The guy told me the other captain had a heart attack. So,
Boy, I see, you know, that's commitment to be home for Christmas right there. Having a heart attack to be home with the kids for Christmas, kudos.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, he had a heart attack, hon. She's like, but you told me, honey, it's a heart attack. My daughter wrote me a note, all I want for Christmas, Santa, is my daddy home.
oh,
And they had to wait until 7 o'clock that night to open up their presents. So my favorite part of it, because I am just how should I put this? A rotten dad. I came home at 7 o'clock. Oh, I got home a little earlier. Probably got home at 6 o'clock. I walked through the door, and they've been allowed to open one present. And my wife, Missy, is tremendous. She put together a stereo for my daughter, figured out how to hook it up, get the antenna on it. And I mean, this is back in the day. She was probably 7, maybe 8, and had the stereo and the other one's little. And she got a Barbie thing, and my wife put it all together and all that. So I walk in the door, and they're like jumping up and down. They go, "Daddy's home, let's go, let's go." Well, I'm going to take a shower. And I got to take a shower. No, you can't do that. And of course I didn't, but it was just fun just to look at them like, no, the realization. But again, it's, it does impact your life. It impacts your kids. And I also had an impact after 9/11 on my girls because I was always angry, and knowing that the stuff you do can affect your children. And when you are in that realm, you don't see it. So, and I told you the other one, my wife always said to me, don't use your fine house voice. They're little girls. You're not yelling at firemen. They're little girls. Oh, I wasn't yelling. It probably was.
There was a tone.
There was a tone, there was an inflection. And, again, pay attention to what you're doing. It is your family first, firehouse family second. Put your faith in there, whatever else you have. But remember that your family is number one. Because long after you're gone from the job, they're going to be what's there.
Yeah.
They're going to be what's there.
Well, and for those of you listening, and especially you younger firefighters, what you just heard, you're getting it from somebody. There's nobody who has committed more of their life to the fire service than Mike. And there's nobody who's done. There's plenty of people who have done as much as Mike has done for the fire service. There's nobody who's done more. And to hear it from somebody who has married that walk of giving his life and committing and literally changing the fire service, but also ensuring that his family stays at the top priority, and when it gets out of balance, correcting it. The thing you heard, which I think is great, is even the best of us get out of balance. That's not the issue. That's going to happen to you one way or the other. It can actually go the other way. You can get out of balance with the fire service and your family, and so much is committed to your family that you're not doing your job. You're not paying attention to your job. There has to be that balance. But you're hearing it from somebody who's done it, kept the first family first, but also enjoyed what I would think you would say would be just an incredible career.
I had a blessed career.
Yeah.
I was blessed. I worked in some of the best firehouses in the city of New York, and I had a blessed career. And again, I also had an issue where my wife got very sick, and but the fire department came through for me, and they knew that the first family was the first family, and I was put on leaves and take my whatever, and I didn't go to work for 70-something days, and they didn't care. They didn't care. You have to take care of that. My wife was deathly ill. I mean, she was given last rites. I was told to come say goodbye to her. And the fire department was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. I couldn't have been working for IBM or any other Fortune 500 company and had the same outlook. It wouldn't have been the same way. So we do have a blessed thing because we have our first family and then we have our second family, and they take care of us. And I know there are companies, individuals out there who are going through things at home with family and everything. Reach out to your brother and sisters in the firehouse and let them help you. They will help you get through this because we are a family.
Well, and you could talk about it. We saw how the fire service can move in 9/11 in a way that we never would have imagined. Our youngest son, the boys were always proud that I was a firefighter, but we live a long way. We live in Seattle. We live outside Seattle about an hour, and so very difficult commute. Working in a tougher part of town, so they didn't come to the firehouse very often. And we only had at the time, because we tried to keep Ann home and live within our means and not be an indebted family. We had one car for a long time, man, and it was a little Mitsubishi. It was a small little car. So when I took the car to work, they were landlocked. So coming to the firehouse was a we all come type of thing. And boy, Rick was how old? Oh, you tell the story.
Yeah, he was 13 on 9/11, which is a really influential age. And you kind of don't really notice how much your kids are picking up. But he was really impacted by 9/11. He was old enough to get it and to see those planes, and old enough to understand terrorism. And somewhere he heard that Seattle was a target. And again, didn't really think to shield him from that information because I didn't know he was paying attention that close. But he was just freaking out that all of a sudden my dad is going to be attacked by terrorists. And for a while there, up until then, the kids weren't all that nervous about dad being at the firehouse. And all of a sudden now Rick, 13 years old, just old enough to get it, started, every time you worked, Mom, did dad call yet today? Why? Do you want something? Or is he okay? Is he safe? And the whole 24 hours that you were gone, did he call? Did he call? And in those days, we didn't even have cell phones yet. So I couldn't just call and say, you need to call your son. It was long distance. I wasn't really allowed to call the station. And for a while there, I thought, oh my gosh, this kid's in trouble, and he's panicking and wait for dad. And you often didn't call till sometimes after 10 o'clock.
Well, and that morning, interestingly, I wasn't working. I was working in the city, but I was at a training site getting ready to do a hands-on drill for the fire department. But I was working outside the normal routine, and we're waiting for everybody to show up, not knowing really everything that's going on. I heard a little bit about it coming in on a sports station. And then I was parked trying to get the drill going, and then not fully realizing how bad it was. And then we got a radio, hey, drill's canceled. None of you guys are going anywhere. we reported to various stations, and then they finally put us in different places because we were upstaffing. Then we finally got the gist of what was happening, the magnitude of it. And I remember driving into the city and just looking up at the Space Needle and the Columbia Tower, and every plane that was going by, you just wonder, man, is this the next thing to happen? So, and then, boy, coming home, I probably didn't call you guys until it was probably later afternoon before I got to somewhere where I could call you.
Yeah. But this went on for months after 9. I mean, gosh, I'd say a year even. Every time, is dad okay? Is dad okay? And
phone would ring.
Is that dad? Yeah. And so that we were surprised that our 15-year-old, careless. Yeah, he was a teenager. He had his own life. Wasn't. But our 13-year-old became quite consumed about it for a while, and concerned him for his dad, and so much so that all he's talked about for years is homeland security and wanting to protect firefighters, and actually even did an emphasis on that in law school just to protect firefighters. So you never know quite what's going to impact the kids, but that's been interesting to watch. He has a very different perspective now, the dangers, and it is a family affair. It does affect the kids for good and for bad. Both of our boys love firefighters, love the community and community service, and did a lot of volunteer work, and so there's a lot of good stuff. But what I want to say about second family being there on your dark day, and what I feel my role is to encourage the spouse, and the marriage. If you make a real effort to make sure your wife feels first, no matter what, she won't develop that jealousy, and that way you can have both, because both families are awesome, and to have that balance. And so Mike's been real good about keeping me part of his station so that I don't feel jealous, and I love his second family like family, and I know that they will be there on our darkest days, and that helps me sleep at night, that knowing that he is safe in their care. And so to avoid that jealousy, you can have both. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other, and that's what I'm hoping to help bridge that gap with some tips on that, and how to actually do that. Keep your spouse involved and help keep them from becoming jealous, so you don't lose one or the other.
Well, so they're probably wondering then, without giving any of the dirty details, about the dumb things I've done, what's one of the first tips that you would say, one of the first conversation pieces to have for folks who are, they love being a firefighter, they love their spouse, and it's kind of causing a grind? What's the first thing you would say to them?
Well, I call them the red flags of warning. When I start noticing certain things, I call them red flags. I'm starting to get that irritated, starting to get jealous. Probably the first thing would be when he's home, he's not really home. And I'm talking to you and you're on the phone, you're typing, you're thinking of your next project, you're thinking of somebody else, you're thinking of another firefighter, and I'm standing right here and I'm trying to talk to you and you're not hearing me, you're disconnected. That's red flag number one. And
we're just talking hypothetically.
Oh.
That was never me, right? That wasn't me, was it?
I'm talking to you and you're not listening to me. I said it 3 times and you still, or you're answering a question I asked you a half hour ago. That's red flag number one, that distracted, so overwhelmed, so busy that when you're here, you're not here. And I just need that focused time a little bit every day. I don't need a lot, but I need that connection. That's important. So that's red flag number one. Red flag number two is now it's gone a little farther to where any communication we are having is almost terse and getting that kind of short. I actually don't have time for you. So that's a little bit farther. And then next thing is taking on project after project and not running it by me. And so, and now we're gone all the time, working too much. So he's learned probably the best thing is any major project that the firehouse wants from you, he's got to run it by me first and tell me what all is involved. And he's gotten really good at saying no. And the more he says no, the more I say yes. And that's been a good balance too, that I ultimately have the ultimate veto because it involves me. It makes me feel involved. I've got buy-in. So if I say yes, okay, now I've got buy-in, I got skin in the game, it's okay. But if you make all these decisions and commitments and involvements and are hanging with the guys and gals too much, and then I'm going to start to get jealous and the scale's tipping. So those are just a few.
Well, we talk about that, don't we, Mike? In our leadership class, we talk about the fact that it's just a double-edged sword, and I mean, a lot of the things that impact us are not because we're doing bad things, right? You know, when you're effective, you know, we talk about the circle of influence and circle of concern. I mean, you can probably speak to this in your own life. When you prove effective, people want you around, and they want you to do more stuff, and that turns into more stuff.
Yep, it turns into more stuff, and they want you to do more. They put you on committees. They ask you to do drills. They ask you to help write things. They help you. Can you put books in? Can you do this or whatever else? Can you work on our books? Can you look at our stuff? And you do more, and you do more, and you do more. Well, again, that's all well and good in your career, in your life, but you got to understand that there's also somebody on the other side of that's taking time from either the family. If you know you're doing it on your time for the job, you're taking time from your family. So you got to make sure that you do it. And I mean, one of the things I always loved was anytime I did work extra, got some extra money, I used to come in and give a bunch of it to my wife and say, here you go, date night. Put it in an envelope.
Yeah.
When we're getting stressed, we're going to go out to a real nice dinner, get a babysitter. And again, back in the day, we didn't have much money. And date night, you know, the babysitter, that cost was a big factor in where we were going, whether we were going out for, you know, a burger and a beer, or whether we were going to a movie, or whether we were going out to a nice, but the babysitter was a big factor, right? You know, right? How much that was going to cost us. But, you know, you got to be able to sit down and talk like adults and connect.
Well, and so that's a great entry into what has been kind of a surprise to us. But probably the single piece of advice that Annie has given that has resonated the most is, again, communication and talking to each other. But it's that time when you come back from work after being in the fire world, which is intense at times, and sleep deprivation and seeing crazy stuff and people at their worst and on and on and on. Now you come back home. And so tell them about that. That both from it's been interesting in both the fire world, which we're predominantly with, but also in the professional world. You know, nothing to do with the fire service. This concept has really resonated.
Yeah, I call it re-entry time. Re-entry time. And that time when you're coming back together as husband and wife, no matter what time of day it is for you. For us, it was in the morning because he worked a 24-hour shift. But I noticed it. That was probably the first thing I noticed as a young firefighter wife. Again, back in the day, no cell phones. We're apart for 24, 48 hours. Got these two little boys. Daddy's home. Comes in the door. Pounce. You know, I need to tell you about this. I miss you. I need adult conversation. I need to reconnect. This happened. I'm feeling this. Kids, daddy. Let's go here. Let's go there. And he's standing there, bleary-eyed and irritated and not as happy to see us as we are. At least it appeared that he wasn't quite as happy to see us as we were to see him. And so I learned over the years, not the best thing to do is to pounce on the person walking in the door, especially if they've been up all night, high intensity world, coming home to civilian life. I learned to give him a little space, and it has absolutely, I think, saved our marriage, because that pouncing, again, it appeared I was happier than he was to see him, a little offended. Next thing you know, we're fighting, and we got a couple days off, and it takes a day or two just to get over that fight.
Then you're right back to it.
Yeah, and then he's got to go back to work. We're starting all over. So I just learned over the years, just, give daddy that space. Don't hit him with the honey-do list the second he walks in the door. Don't expect a big, long conversation. Just go take a nap, go take a shower, take a rest, no pressure. But I need that connection at some point during the day. I connect verbally. That's important to me. And so later when he's rested, when he's happy, then he gives me what I need, and that's kind of conversation and connection. But that willingness to just hold back has absolutely been the best thing that I could have done.
And it certainly is reciprocal,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, whoever it is coming home, give them a break, give them a chance, especially in this world of firefighting where it is so intense, and it is sometimes a little harder to transition. A little bit of gap is especially important, but it's important for any job because everybody comes home a little irritated. Yeah.
And, some of the people now, even in the corporate world, some of the working moms coming home after being either on the train or driving for an hour and a half in traffic coming home, it's not fun time. It's not fun time. And we're now on edge, like, gotta come home. What do I gotta do? Mom might be thinking about dinner, what I gotta do for the kids for school tomorrow, and walks into stress and everything else. And definitely understand that. And my favorite line my wife used to say, don't use your firehouse words. They're not firemen, they're little girls.
Yeah.
Get down. I wasn't yelling. And probably I was.
Yeah, and if you get a little reentry time, you might more easily shift out of firehouse voice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So and you want to do that. You want to reconnect, and we all want to, but you have to be ready emotionally to do that. And I think that's a great point for most people.
Well, she played in her class, and actually for the first time, talking about reentry time, and it's an extreme example, but it captured it so beautifully from American Sniper. When Chris Kyle is coming back from his 4th tour, and he's done. Told her, I'm coming home and I'm done. And as you would imagine, his wife, Taya, and the kids are so excited to see him. Been gone for 9 months, horrific, scary stuff, and hearing about people coming back dead. And he's in a bar, and they recreated the scene so beautifully. He's sitting in a bar, he didn't go right home. He's sitting in a bar and he's having a drink, and you can see him, and he's just emotional. And the phone rings, and it rings, and it rings, and it rings. It's his wife. And she's saying, hey, honey, where are you? Are you in Germany? He said, no, I caught an earlier flight. I'm stateside. She said, oh, where? He says, oh, well, I'm home. I'm here. And he said, well, come home. We miss you. The kids want to see you. And he said, I just needed a minute. I needed a minute to get back from this world that is so intense to this world that is not intense. It's home, it's comfortable, but they're so disparate, they're so different. And you can see on the other end, they did it beautifully. She's like, honey, come home, we miss you. He says, okay, I'm coming home. And you get up, she's here, and she just goes, you know, try. Hard for the spouse to get it. Hard for the person who's coming from that world to articulate it. And I think one of the things that Ann has done so well, just created this block of advice that tries to point you to getting on each other's side and understanding each other, where each other is coming from. And instead of being selfish and claiming your own needs, to try to be reciprocal and to, you know, to work through each other's needs. I think that, boy, if I could encapsulate everything you wrote in the book, which we got to talk about the book, right? It's selflessness. It's serving your spouse, right?
And a really powerful example, again, 9/11. We heard this amazing speech by a 9/11 survivor. And this was a civilian up in one of the towers. And she was there when the plane struck the building, and she heard it. I mean, she was way up high, and that sound, and the plane sound, and that crash sound. And then she goes on to describe her escape out of the building, and how everybody was charging so fast down the stairs. And at one point she fell and actually broke her back, and kept going. And she said to this day she is still haunted by the faces of the firefighters coming up the stairs. And she said, I still see their faces. I looked them in the eye, and here we were all terrified, and they're marching up. And then really impacted her. And then she said, not just recently, she was at an air show with her husband, and she all of a sudden had like a flashback or a reaction of those planes racing overhead, and she just had a panic attack and had to leave the air show that was very expensive and hard to get into. And her husband came running out, and he was kind of mad at her and said, you know, why are we leaving? You know, I got these tickets. And she said, you know, I couldn't take it. I couldn't take that sound. And he got mad at her. So at the end of her talk, Mike asked her, what could your husband do to help you? What would you have preferred? And she said, I wish he would take the time to understand what's going on with me and do the research, look into PTSD or trauma, and look into it himself, so that I wouldn't have to explain it all the time because I feel selfish. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to do a little bit, is to encourage spouses by reading this book or other sources. Look into what your firefighter is going through so that you can understand without them having to tell you all the time. And that's part of the selflessness that we're hoping to convey. Husband and wife, firefighters, try to understand what's going on, so that you can be truly unselfish and be supportive. And of course, it will be reciprocated. Mike is incredibly passionate and understanding of my side of things, but that's what I'm hoping to encourage. Just look into it a little bit, so that they don't have to tell you all the time. That you'll just kind of get it as best you can. You'll get it. Be there for each other.
Well, we have been out teaching, Mike, and I know you can probably speak to this as well as anybody. You never quite know what it is that's going to happen that's going to tip you. It's going to make you all of a sudden remember things that you have back in the back, but now all of a sudden here it is. Whether it's the appropriate time or not, here it is.
It happened today at the StatCon, bro. They played the news radio clip from that day of the news radio. Plane hit the tower, and they were playing our local in New York City 1010 Wins is the 24-hour news feed, and they played 1010 Wins. They had the reporters on there talking, and I heard everything, and it does bring you back. I mean, it does happen, and I am doing very well. I deal with it and everything else, but when it happens, you can be right back there, and things do happen. And, you know, I tell people all the time, the worst one for me is the smell. Because afterwards, I mean, there were human beings in that pile of rubble. And the smell was unbelievable. And anyone who was there will talk about the smell. And that can bring me back faster than anything else. But on a much lighter note, or a much better note, let's put it that way, you were talking about your book. Just so everybody understands what it is, could you tell them what the title of it is and where they can get it?
It's called Challenges of the Firefighter Marriage at Enwell. Penwell.com, is it?
Penwell.com.
You can order it on Penwell. We worked really hard
Or
to.
Amazon.com.
Oh, it's on
We
Amazon.
just noticed today it
Oh,
was on
wow.
Amazon for the first time.
Good for you. Get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And we did the best we could to get it really affordable. We wanted it to be affordable to firefighters everywhere. It's actually very inexpensive for a textbook. So, yeah, challenges of the firefighter marriage.
And tell them a little bit about how you broke it up. How you broke it up and what you tried to do with it.
Well, I start with the 3 aspects of this job that make it different from most others, and that's danger, trauma, 24-hour shift. And I go into the 5 essential conversations that I think every firefighter couple should have. Go into time off, how time off should be spent with exercise, sleep, because sleep deprivation is an issue. And then we go into kids, finances, cancer, even dealing with the aspect of potential death and how we've coped with that, and how that can actually make couples grow distant because you're afraid of losing them. You can withdraw emotionally, and how important it is. Don't do that. And that's just some of the stuff.
We did a little give and take. Right?
Give and take. Oh yeah, I forgot about my buddy.
It's okay.
Mike wrote. He answered everything that I put forth. It's my side and then his side, and then to top it off, we brought in 23 sidebars, and Mike Dugan is in there, Mike and Missy, and their story. We've got Lasky in there, Combs, John Norman,
Anthony Castro, some of my friends from Seattle, Brian Root, Rob Fisher, big guy with the Fools.
Yeah.
Angie Hughes, captain from Baltimore, and her husband Rob.
And that's what makes it worth reading. And also I wanted to include, there is a chapter on divorce is not the end, to encourage you that just because maybe your first marriage fails doesn't mean your second one will, and it's never the end. There's always hope. You can always start over. It's not the end. So.
Well, I think one of the things you'll be struck by with how she wrote it, I've read some stuff, not all. There's actually some good fire marriage stuff out there, and certainly encourage people to, find your answers wherever you can get them. go get your answers, to try to make things work. But I know that in some of the stuff that I've read, it has actually been just very critical of the fire service, and critical of what the fire service does to people. I don't think you're going to find any of that in Ann's book, because she's loves the fire service. We're very appreciative of it. Just acknowledging and recognizing that the fact that you have to do what we have to do to be good firefighters and to deliver the services the citizens need has impact on the individuals, which then comes home and seems to be having tremendous impact on couples, on marriages, on kids, on people staying together. And one of the things I appreciate so much is we are interested in you not getting divorced. That's true. But that is not the total mission.
No.
I mean, the way she decided to write this and put it together, one of the primary missions is we want you to have a blast. We want you to have a marriage that is wonderful and fulfilling and mutually fulfilling. And the spouse helping the firefighter to live their dreams, and the firefighter just as interested in seeing that the spouse has time and is able to live their dreams. And that's what I found so refreshing, because I had the easy job. I just got to read what she wrote and I got to respond to it. So mine was a piece of cake. She had to create out of thin air these concepts and ideas and chapters, and that's what really jumped out at me about how you decided to put it together.
Yeah, that it isn't just all about the firefighter in the home. That and Mike's really good about making sure that I get to live my dreams too, and to be a good dad. I don't think kids should ever be sacrificed on the altar of any profession. You sign up for this job, you're willing to risk it all, even your life. But the one price I bet most firefighters are not willing to ever pay is to lose their family along the way, and to not be there for the kids. And so Mike's real good about bringing that in, about it's not all about you, even though it's an amazing profession. Be there for your spouse, be involved in their job, be there when they need you on their dark days. When I need him, he's there. And what's kind of neat is I kind of try to write pro firefighter side, and he tries to write pro spouse side. Say, hey, none of this is an excuse to be a jerk. none of this is ever an excuse for abuse, verbal, any kind of abuse. And he defends the spouse and say, make sure that they're living their dreams and you support their career as well. So it is a teamwork effort in marriage, teamwork effort in the book. Brought in lots of other voices, so it's not just boring us all the time. We got people like Mike in there that make it 1,000 times better. We've even got some Australians in there
Yeah,
too.
little international flavor
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
So
How they do it.
You know, the thing that is really interesting, because we've already been there. Mike's there now. She and I now fully realize the old adage that eventually your kids are going to grow up and they're going to go. We're there. I mean, our kids we married young, had kids young. Our kids are, 30, whatever, 29,
Yeah.
30, 31. They're in their own lives, doing their own stuff, taking care of their own stuff. And even though those of you who have kids right now don't fully recognize it, there is going to come a time when it's going to cycle back around. And hopefully, if you do things right, if your wife or your husband's still around, it's going to circle around and it's right back to how you started. It's you two. And the rest of your family, while you'll still be close and enjoy stuff and have holidays and all that, it's going to be you two again. And if you don't nurture that and take care of it, that may not be the case. The kids may go, and if that was the focus of your life, you no longer have anything in common. Mike, you're there now, right, brother? There's nobody who loved the girls more than you did.
Well, one of them's still at home, but she's very, very busy, involved with her 2 jobs. And so, yes, Sarah doesn't live with us anymore, but it's still great. And it's, life, Missy and I are spending a lot more time together, and it's great. And life is good. So I guess we're getting ready to wrap this up, Scott. So we have a minute left. So I just want to tell all the people who are listening, watching, or whatever, that this was a great FDIC. I had a great time this year. I did a lot. I was busy, walked a lot, but I had a great time. And I thank you for teaching with me. I appreciate it. I'm so glad you are here and that your book is out. Congratulations.
And did you have a good time teaching your first class?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you scared?
I was scared to death. I'm not even really sure what all I said.
Well, I can affirm for you. You said wonderful stuff, and this is just a little bit of a snapshot of the types of things that you can get at FDIC. You can learn about truck stuff, engine stuff, chief stuff, rescue stuff, tool stuff. Mike, I think it's incredible that we're seeing a lot more of the behavioral wellness type of stuff, legal stuff. Boy, and I'm looking right out the window at fire trucks and fire engines and tools on the exhibitor floor. Folks, FDIC is an absolute blast. Mike calls it crack cocaine for firefighters. Annie calls it Disneyland for firefighters. I would just encourage you to try to figure out a way to make it happen for you and your crew and come along. And man, if you can, bring your spouse and have a blast. So from Mike and Mike, from Annie, God bless you, and we'll see you down the road.
And thank you again to Scott and 3M for sponsoring this.
Fire Engineering Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Emery with 3M Scott Fire and Safety, and welcome to FDIC 2018. It's my privilege to be talking to you today on Fire Engineering's Trusted Voices Radio Network, and we're going to close out the day with you with a pretty important message. I want to talk a little bit about not just the immediate safety and your immediate safety and well-being, but we're going to talk a little bit today about long-term exposure. And we're going to talk to you about what you can do and the best practices out there to minimize that exposure on the fire ground. I know this is a topic that has been discussed over and over, but we're going to try to bring it to you with a little bit of a fresh point of view today. So, as I said, my name is Jeff Emery. I'm the business unit leader for 3M Scott's SCBA and Fire business, and I'm joined here today by Keith Dyson. So, Keith is the Vice President of Education and Research for the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. And for those of you who don't know the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, this is a group out there that right now is doing a lot of good for a lot of people, too many people, to be honest. But they've also been carrying this banner for well over a decade. And it's great to see the amount of momentum now and the amount of support coming out. So I'm going to be joined by Keith today, and we're going to talk about a couple topics. And I want to talk to you also a little bit about Scott's position and what Scott is doing and their commitment to the fire services to do our part as a leader in safety to minimize your exposure to long-term risks and long-term contaminants to help you live a healthier life. So last September, I know Keith, myself, we were joined by probably 200 other leaders in the fire services in Phoenix, Arizona, for the first annual Fire Services Occupational Cancer Symposium. And I can tell you, it's one of the most powerful events that I've had the honor of being at in my time at Scott. And I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. It brought a lot of data, a lot of research to the fire services. And I can tell you that myself personally, I came back from that show committed as much as ever to make sure that we're playing our role, because I think everybody in this industry, it has to do more. If we're going to combat this disease, and if we're going to try to fight cancer in the fire services. So our role as an industry leader is to make sure that we are supporting those in the industry that are driving best practices, that are driving awareness. And just as importantly, we need to make sure that we're investing in product development, in designs that think about the decontamination from the time we start those projects. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. And I want to start by just asking Keith a little bit about his view of the progress that you've seen over the last 10 years, and maybe in particular over the last 6 months since the Cancer Symposium. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, I'd like to ask Keith to give a little bit of an overview of the work that the team does.
So the Firefighter Cancer Support Network is a nonprofit national organization that sits down with a member who gets diagnosed with some form of cancer, assigns a mentor to them if they reach out to us, and basically sits down and talks to them and says, here's what you're going to go through, here's the good, here's the bad, and here's the ugly. In addition to that, we send them a mentor toolbox full of information that will kind of guide them through this issue of cancer. Cancer survivor that I am, this was a very difficult situation when I first got diagnosed. When I started making phone calls around my department, it was one of those, who's had prostate cancer, what did you do for it? And the more phone calls that I made, the worse it seemed to get. And it was ultimately a gentleman that called me up and said, I hear you're looking for a prostate cancer survivor. I said, yeah. He says, well, I'm your guy. And I said, wait a minute, we've been working together for 10 years. How come I didn't know about you having cancer? And he goes, because it wasn't something we talked about. And that was back in 2008. So consequently, I took that very much to heart. And I said, we have to change this whole concept and education and awareness of what was going on. Because what I found out that within Miami-Dade Fire and Rescue, 32% of our members, active members on the job, had been diagnosed with some form of cancer in just a 3-year window. And so consequently, it hit hard. And we've lost in our department, again, 121 members. 115 of those I've worked with during my career in the department. And again, that makes it very difficult and very personal to me. So we started this program and started reaching out to our partners such as yourself and 3M, and we're obviously very grateful for those opportunities, because I think working with partners such as 3M, it gives us the opportunity to change culture, change perceptions, change possibly the way we look at things in the future as to where we're heading to. So, again, I think that's a big change. And I look, like I said, I look back upon my career when I first started back in 1974, and a SCBA was in a suitcase in the back of the rig, and I stepped off the tailboard and ran to go get it, and the officer says, "Ricky, you don't need that. We're going in and fight a fire. Suck it up." You look back upon that type of a career, three-quarter length boots and the jackets and garden gloves, that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, and again, look how far we've come. So, now to the second part of your question, how far we've come in the last 6 months. Here we are not only talking about, different types of PPE and different gear and better SCBA, but we're now starting to look at, apparatus changes, clean cab concepts. We're looking at fire stations that are being redesigned and with a concept of red, yellow, green zones and those types of issues. So we're changing the culture slowly, little by little.
So I think that what I've seen over the last several months has certainly been a momentum build. I think the level of awareness is now clearly heightened within the fire services, and I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing out there as I talk to different departments, as I travel to departments, how many are starting to implement best practices. However, I think when it comes to the SCBA, it's been one of those last pieces, one of the last pieces of the system to really get that consideration. So I see a lot of departments that are doing a great job now, taking the turnout gear off, backing it up, taking it back and having a decontamination process, swapping out the hoods, all those things that we've been telling fire departments to do and do regularly. And then those same departments in many cases are taking their SCBA, and where are they putting it, right back into the seat, riding back in this confined space and call it apparatus. And I think that's an area that we can do something about as well. And so we obviously think about things from a spectrum of the breathing apparatus. It's the heart and soul of what Scott provides to the user. Take a lot of pride in the design that's gone in, the innovation that's gone in, and it's forced us as a manufacturer, as a leader, to think about innovation a little bit differently and think about what we can do to make that decontamination a little bit easier. Think about what we can do to make a system that's truly cleanable. And so Jason's going to talk in a little bit about the AirPack X3 Pro. And I can promise you, from the second we started design on that this was what we were thinking about. So I know Wednesday night you had a chance to join us. We had a little bit of a kickoff party for FDIC, and one of the things that I was really proud of there was that we had the opportunity with 3M support to be able to provide donations to two really special organizations, right? And we provided $25,000 to the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. We're pleased to have you join us there. And I see Ed Klima standing back there, and I'm going to call Ed to the stage in a second and put him on the spot as well. But Ed is from the FRC, the First Responder Center for Excellence, and another fantastic organization that is stemmed out of the Fallen Firefighters Foundation with a focus on what we can do to educate on best practices around not just reducing long-term impacts of exposure, but other areas like behavioral health and other areas that go beyond the original scope of the NSSS mission, but really, really important in today's day and age. And we're really pleased to see the direction that the organization has gone with the institution, the FRC. So it was our honor to be able to provide that donation. It's part of our commitment and our promise to the fire services to play our role in supporting those best practices. And we have worked with both Ed and the whole team for the Firefighter Cancer Support Network to make sure that we're applying those to teaching best practices across this country around decontamination. So I'm going to call Ed up for a second and ask him to share the mic with you for a minute, Keith, and maybe say a couple words about what the FRC is doing, just like Keith did about the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, and then talk maybe a little bit about what you guys are doing with some of the funding that is coming in, and what some of the most important initiatives are in this space right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the support.
ongoing support from 3M and Scott, not only from the financial perspective and the programs that we are, but your support to the cause and developing technology to make the job easier for the firefighters. So that's greatly appreciated. I think you agree as well. So, you know, one of the things that we're all about at the FRC and with our partners here at the Cancer Support Network is getting usable information out to the fire service. And so we have a number of training programs that are coming online this year that are geared towards the company officer. They can be downloaded from the first responder website. They're ready to go. You can hit play, or you can also amend them to your own use at your department as you see fit. But we're trying to make it easier for you all out of the fire service to get the right information. The other big thing real quick I want to hit on is the Firefighter Cancer Alliance held their first symposium last September in Phoenix, which we had over 600 attendees. All of the researchers were there, all of the folks that are focused on the issue. And you know, we can't recreate that symposium every other month, but what we can do is take the best components of that and conduct a one-day seminar, which I'm pleased to announce we plan to start doing in the fall in conjunction with you guys, and take that show on the road. So these funds will go a long way to helping us be able to deliver that training and take it on the road so we can maximize the exposure and get the right information. Because I think one of the challenges out there is that there's a lot of the wrong information out there. And so we want to get the right information out there so people are doing the right thing.
All right. So, you know, I think it's clear, hopefully, where our heart is and where our heads are at on this effort. And you know, as a manufacturer, our intention isn't to go out and create these best practices. Our intention is to partner with those organizations out there that are doing the good work, that are doing the real research and finally putting science to this issue to try to better understand what the air is that we're breathing, to better understand the conditions on the fire ground, and better understand the effectivity of different types of cleaning procedures. So, you know, that's where when we want to focus money, we'd rather do that and have the best practices coming from those third parties, coming from those industry experts. So, you know, Keith, I know both of your organizations are great resources for information. Can you give your perspective on a couple other sources of information out there that you are seeing and where you would direct individuals who are trying to learn a little bit more about how they can protect themselves?
So there's a number of resources, and ones that I tend to go to a lot is CDC and NIOSH for a lot of their studies. Gavin Horn and the Illinois Fire Service Institute is doing a lot of good things up there. Peter McBride up in Ottawa. Jeff Burgess out in Arizona, along with the University of Miami Sylvester Cancer Center, who I work very closely with in the Fort area. And then we've got Boston that's involved in a lot of the studies. So, you know, we're looking at a lot of different things in these studies. Exposure rates, decontamination issues, you know, what we can do in developing best practices as it goes along. So I think you're going to see all of us basically starting to develop these SOPs, putting them out there on the web so that other firefighters and departments can download them, and if not adopt them fully, at least they can, you know, change them up a little bit. You know, as Brian kind of said the other day, he says, we'll call it research and development, it's not plagiarism. And I thought that was kind of funny, but, you know, it's so true at times.
Just to add real quick, so one of the things that we find in today's world is just the saturation of information and where do you get the right information. So the nice thing is that the FRC's website, firstresponders.org/cancer, is a cancer toolkit that was developed by the Cancer Alliance. And it has all the research. So you don't have to go searching all those places that you just mentioned. You can go there and it'll take you to all of that stuff. So it's the toolkit for prevention measures or whatever. It also has the link right back to the Cancer Support Net toolkit, which is for after the diagnosis. So, you know, one-stop shopping.
Terrific. Well, listen, I personally want to thank both of you for what you and the whole teams across the country are doing to further this cause. It's our pleasure to be associated with two organizations like this, and we appreciate all the help, and I think you both know that we have my long-term commitment to keep fighting this battle. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. So, kind of sum up this section. We put out a Scott promise last fall following the cancer symposium about our commitment to minimizing exposure on the fire ground and our commitment to helping promote education, to promote research, to promote dissemination of best practices, but also to put our investment and our dollars into developing products to help fight this issue. So the first product that we've launched with that solely in mind is our AirPack X3 Pro SCBA. And I'd like to invite Jason Cannon up for a couple minutes to walk you through some of the features, walk you through some of the unique aspects, including these removable soft goods, and tell you a little bit about the intent of this project and why this creates value for you, the firefighter.
Thank you, Jeff. So as Jeff said, we have a new product called the AirPack X3 Pro, and a big push from a design standpoint was really geared around looking at material selection that would help provide better resistance to exposure that could be easily cleaned. And so we looked at the material selection. We've chosen materials that are actually common materials that turnout gear manufacturers are using today. So they're going to be very resilient. They're going to be more resistant to water absorption, also chemical exposure as well. We're certainly not saying that it's the end-all be-all, but it was a proactive step for us to be able to help reduce the contamination on the AirPack SCBA that the firefighter is going to encounter. Another step that we've taken with that has to do with the ability to easily remove the harness. So in today's industry, if I go and I talk to 100 firefighters or 100 fire departments, if I had 10% of those fire departments that are routinely and actively cleaning the SCBA, getting down to the shoulder harness and what we would call the soft goods, typically we don't find that. And one of the reasons for that is it's not that easy to do. And so certainly firefighters, right, they have a lot on their plate. They have a lot of things to do with the equipment that they're maintaining, that they use. And so if it's not easy to do, it typically doesn't get done. And so one of the things that we tried to do to combat that is come up with a design that really was easy for a department level firefighter to be able to remove, right? It doesn't require any type of training, doesn't have to be a technician, right? It needs to be something that when I come off shift or I come back from a call as a firefighter, that I can actually easily remove the harness to be able to clean. And so that's one of the things that we've done. So the harness on the AirPack X3 Pro, it is easily removable. It doesn't require extensive training. It's like anything else, right? As I do it a couple of times, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get a little more proficient with it, but it's easy to do. It doesn't require the use of any tools. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Certainly we don't want to have to require tools, and especially tools that are not commonly found right there at the fire station. And so I'm going to remove the harness without the use of tools, and that includes the shoulder harness that you see here. It's going to include the waist pad as well, the straps. Everything can come off of the AirPack X3 Pro SCBA, and now it's ready to be laundered. And so another thing that we did in our design of the AirPack X3 Pro was we wanted to make sure that not only could the harness be removed, but that it was easily launderable, easily cleaned. And so we've done our research, we've done some testing. Some of what that we refer back to is the recommendations that you would typically find in NFPA 1851. So that's going to provide your cleaning procedures and recommendations for your turnout gear. And so we wanted to model our cleaning procedures and recommendations off of what turnout gear manufacturers are already doing. As I mentioned before, the material that we've chosen is very similar, and if not the same, as what some of the turnout gear manufacturers are using today. And so we're taking those best practices as pulled from the turnout gear manufacturers, as pulled from NFPA 1851, and then we're going to put those recommendations into the hands of our customers. So now I have a harness that can be easily removed. I have procedures in place and recommendations to ensure that I'm not going to damage the harness and that I'm going to be able to clean it to the best of my ability. So it can be laundered, it can be thrown into a mesh bag, put into a commercial washing machine. Again, no different than washing turnout gear, washing a Nomex hood as an example. And then another step that we've taken, again, to be a little proactive, make it easier on the fire department and the firefighter to achieve this, is SCBA are not routinely available. Fire departments don't have SCBA coming out of every closet and just spares, available. And so we want to make sure the SCBA can be very quickly put back into service, right? Depending on the department we're talking about, volunteer versus career, right? We may have a large call volume, right? And so I may be routinely going out the door. I can't wait around for that SCBA to dry. There certainly is a drying process to the harness, and so I don't want to have to wait around. So one of the things that we've done is we've made a spare harness available. So when a customer configures their Airpack SCBA or Airpack X3 Pro, I should say, they have the ability to order a spare harness kit. Now, if they choose to not want to do that for every SCBA, or they want to do it after the fact, we make a spare harness kit available as a separate part as well. But the idea being is that let's have a harness that's easily removable. And once I've removed that harness, I need a spare harness that I can quickly put back onto the SCBA and get that product back in service. And so that's kind of what we've done as far as the harness is concerned. So again, big part of the Airpack X3 Pro has to do with and revolves around cleanability. So we're not stopping here. We're going to continue our research. We continue our efforts. We have a lot of resources available to us now, being part of 3M. And so we continue to utilize those resources to come up with, new material design. Also working with our industry partners to continue to develop best practices. And Jeff mentioned that earlier. So that's one of the big things that we try and concentrate on as well, is we want to utilize our industry partners, utilize their expertise, and make sure that we can incorporate that into what we're doing today with the product itself. Several other things I'd like to mention on the Airpack X3 Pro. Again, cleanability was a big part of the design and really what started the design. But we also looked at other improvement areas. There's two other areas we looked at. One area was comfort, and another area was connectivity. So altogether, it really is what we call the 3 C's: cleanability, comfort, and connectivity. And we've done all of these without sacrificing the reliability and the durability that our customers have come to expect with the Scott Airpack SCBA. So we built on a foundation of proven, trusted performance. We have the same redundancy of safety features that we've always had: a dual redundant pressure reducer, mass-mounted regulator with a vibra alert, right? So we still maintain that same pneumatic design, but again, we've looked to achieve enhancements in those 3 key areas. So cleanability we've talked about. Let's talk about the comfort element for a second. And everybody naturally, when they think about comfort, they think about the physical comfort. How does something feel when I put it on? Well, that's one part of it, but that's only one part of it. So yes, we have done our due diligence to improve upon the ergonomics of the SCBA. And one of the things that we've done is we've changed the shoulder pad and the harness design, the waist pad design itself. Again, I mentioned we've gone to closed cell foam padding. That was done as part of the cleanability, but that also naturally provides more padding in terms of the wearability of the SCBA. But we've also incorporated a naturally articulating waist pad. So it's a waist pad that actually has a center attachment point on the back frame. And what that allows me to do is that as I'm moving, it's going to help improve my range of motion. So as I'm moving side to side, I'm going to get a natural articulation of the waist pad with me, so that the pack itself is no longer locked to me. I'm going to be able to move more. All right. Contrary to what other SCBA may have that utilizes a mechanical articulation, we don't tend to see the same wear and tear. So that's an advantage that we like, and something that we built into the Airpack X3 Pro. Some other things that we've done from a comfort standpoint is we've changed our buckle design. And so the buckles that we use, and when you really look across the industry, buckles are really kind of a dime a dozen, right? They're very largely the same. We've incorporated a wire bail design so that our buckles will actually hold firm, so that as I'm using the SCBA, I'm on the fire ground, I'm working, I'm doing strenuous activities, I've been wearing the SCBA for 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes. I don't want to have to deal with the harness assembly inadvertently loosening up over time. And so that happens on other products. It happens on some of our products, but we aimed at trying to eliminate that with going to a new buckle design. So that's another piece of the physical comfort side of things. But again, what we want to do is we want to enable our customers to rethink what comfort means. So it's not just physical comfort. I can make something feel as comfortable as possible wearing it, but there's other pieces of comfort to think about. One piece of comfort is what we would call psychological comfort. It's really peace of mind, right? Ensuring that when you put that AirPack SCBA on, you know without a doubt that it's going to perform with you day in and day out. You're not going to have to worry about, is my SCBA going to work today? And really that comes from the proven track record, the reliability, the durability that we've always incorporated into the AirPack SCBA design. But that provides the firefighter a psychological comfort, right? If I'm jumping off the rig, the last thing I want to think about is my AirPack or SCBA going to work today? All right, so that's the psychological comfort. The last piece of comfort has to do with what we would call respiratory comfort or breathability. So naturally, when I wear an SCBA, I'm going to have resistance because I'm using a positive pressure system. So I'm going to have some degree of resistance. We like to tout with the SCBA, our design, utilizing our easy flow regulator, it naturally reduces the amount of resistance that you have when you're breathing on it, specifically on the exhalation side of things. So if I'm able to breathe easily and I don't have to overwork my lungs as I'm breathing and as I'm exerting my energy doing the day-to-day task on the fire ground, then I'm going to have more comfort. My lungs are going to be more comfortable. So that's what we call the breathability or the respiratory side of comfort. The last thing I want to talk about is connectivity. And with connectivity, it really revolves around integrating Bluetooth technology, giving the ability to wirelessly connect to other devices. Maybe down the road, it'll be a thermal imaging camera. But for today, it's the ability to wirelessly connect and utilize a mobile application to be able to change settings on the SCBA, download required data per NFPA using a mobile application, personalize and program the pack tracker that's on the SCBA. But more importantly, connectivity for us is the ability to improve PAR on the fire ground, reduce the amount of radio traffic that I have on the fire ground. And so EPAR, electronic PAR, it gives us the capability to wirelessly send a signal from incident command to the firefighter, and then that signal is received on the console. I'll get an alarm, a notification. I can double click the reset button, sends a command back to IC, and I've just acknowledged my PAR request. And I've done that without having to ever open up the radio channel. So we're improving communications by reducing the amount of radio traffic. So those are our 3 C's for the AirPack X3 Pro SCBA. And we are excited to offer this new product and showcase it here at FDIC. Thank you.
Jason, that was awesome. If you want to know anything about an AirPack, that is the guy to talk to. He will tell you everything that you need to know about an AirPack and why our Scott X3 Pro is better than anything on the floor. So, as you all have known, we have started this yesterday doing this. First time exclusive here at FDIC, where we produce what we call the 3M Scott Site Challenge, right? So this is where we put contestants in competitive, I guess it would be, everybody here is ready to compete, right? They showed that with these times. So we put them in an X3 Pro. We don their with a Scott Site. We put them on air, and they went through this maze. And what happened is they had to find hot packs in here, and then they had to come out. So it's a dark environment. And they had to bring these out, and we timed them throughout the day, throughout the sessions. We did this all day. As a result, we captured the 4 quickest times, okay? And those made it to what we call the final face-off, to where now they are not going to compete against the clock. They are actually now going to compete against the who's ever beside them, okay? So let's give a round of applause to Tim, David, Evan, and Tyler. So do we have any friends of Tim here? Who's supporting Tim? Tim, there we go, Tim. So the first race, what we're going to do is we're going to have David and Evan going. And how many, so help me out here. How many packs do they have to bring out? They've got 4. So they have to come out They have to go in, find these packs, bring them out, and we need a linesman here. Scriven, could you be the official judge? We're going to need somebody here to mark when they come out, right? So we're going to make sure that nobody goes in too early, but they've got to come out. We got to make sure that we don't have any false starts or somebody that's not coming out with all the hot packs. Yesterday, unfortunately, when we did this at the face-off, we had somebody that actually came out and they only had 3. So they were so excited. I mean, when he came out of this, he almost hit this other side of the wall and he threw his packs out and he had 3. We're like, oh, dude, you're supposed to get 4. So he went running back in. So it's going to be a test. Now, here's the thing. What this is showing is the value of hands-free thermal imaging. Okay, so they're in a dark environment. They have their hands free to do whatever they need to do. So imagine going through this with a standard handheld thermal imager where you're actually having to hold it and find these and search. That is why these times are where they're at today, 14 seconds, 15 seconds, 16 seconds. It's the value of having your hands free to do other things. And that's what Scott Sight's giving you. You're not having to reaching for other things to look. It's instantaneous, it's enhanced situation awareness, and it's always there. And that is what enables these guys and ladies to be able to do exactly what they're going to do here. And I'm going to give t-shirts away later because I've got t-shirts. So stick around. I'm not going to do that till the end. All right, I'm going to do it at the end. But I'm going to give some t-shirts. So let's give one more last round of applause to our competitors. Here we go. Let's cheer them on. We got to get them ready to go. They're going in. Are we ready? You guys ready? You're on air, right? Okay, the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to say ready, set, go. And on go, you go. Scriven, you watch to make sure there's nobody in. Remember, there's 4 packs inside, okay? And here's the thing. Don't hurt yourself, okay? Yesterday we had we've had to replace panels in this booth because we had people run through them. They're just trying to get out so fast. So do not hurt yourself, but win. All right? Dim the lights. Here we go. Ready, set, go. Here we go. They're probably making the first turn. So remember, time doesn't matter for this. Here we go. You'll start to hear the boots will start to shake as they make the turns. Scriven, you get ready, okay? We're counting on you. 13 seconds. So they're probably about halfway through here. And we're going to see what happens here. 18 seconds. We hit them pretty good this time. So we made it a little bit more challenging than last. All right, so they're. See, oh, you hear that? You hear the boom. Somebody's coming out. They made the wrong turn. 36 seconds. Well, we got him out. All right, count them. 4. All right, let's check them because they do say we do have them specially marked as an S on these hot packs. In the event that somebody was sneaky and thought, I'll throw a couple in my pocket as I leave here, and then I'll just go in, hang out for 15 seconds, and walk out. So we did mark these. We do have a winner. Somebody may need to go check on this guy because he could be over there on the other side of the booth. But so, what was your name? Do I know? Okay, David. So David is our first winner, right? And he's going to advance on to the finals. Congratulations, David. And congratulations to you for being such a great sport. Consolation prize, you'll step right over here. We're going to give you a t-shirt. All right, so here we go. Next up, we are going to have Tim and Tyler. Let's give a big hand for Tim and Tyler. Okay, do we have any friends of Tim and Tyler here that's supporting? There we go. There's the support group. So you guys are going to have to cheer him on here, okay? So while they're going to get their face piece on. Say you stay where you're at. You're good. Are you out of breath? You okay? You need a water? You good? You good? Okay. So we're getting these people ready. We're going to have to go in and place the packs. Jamie, when you go in and place the pack, are we placing them just different? So different spots. Okay, or at least to go in, we need to make sure. Yeah, mirrored from each other. So we're making this as fair as we possibly can, okay? Because this is a big deal. We are giving away a Scott Sight to one of these lucky winners today. Whoever wins is going to get hands-free thermal vision today, right now. So David is okay, so we've got David. So it's going to either be Tim or Tyler, right? Tim or Tyler. So let's, let me take your face piece off real quick. So I just want to ask you a couple questions. So are you a Scott Air Pack user?
Absolutely.
And with the Scott Sight, what does that give you?
Like you said earlier, hands-free. I mean, your hands are literally free. The more you can get your hands searching around a room for a possible victim, or building that mental picture for you, the added assistance of a thermal imager without having to look down at it or hold it out in front of you, the faster you can search a room.
Yeah, and that's 100% accurate, because that's exactly what our intention was when we did this, is to show the value of hands-free thermal imaging, and you nailed it. Obviously, you get it because you're here, right? So that was a great time. So are we ready? Do we have the packs that are actually in place? Did you get your shirt? Oh, what size shirt? Medium. Medium. Okay. All right. We are they, okay. Go ahead and put your regulator in. Okay. We have Tim and Tyler. Let's give it up for Tim and Tyler, the semifinals here. They're gonna have one chance to get to this. Guys, be safe. Ready, set, go. Race off. Here we go. So about 10 seconds in, boy, I can tell that they're moving pretty good in here. I can hear it. Tyler, you've got fans out here. Keep it moving. There. You see that? It's not good. 25 seconds. So somebody should be coming out in the next couple of seconds, if I had to guess. 30 seconds. They've got to find 4. So earlier today, we only made them find 2. So you're in the semifinals. You got to find 1. You got to find 4. 40 seconds here. It's taking a little bit longer. All right, here we go. Does he have all 4? Watch out when you can. Tyler is now advancing to the finals. Oh, Tim is now advancing to the finals. I don't know names. I know Scott Air Pack. That's what I know. Scott Sight. I remember those. I don't remember Tim and Tyler. Good job, man. So let's real quick. What was it more difficult finding 4, or was it just as easy? It just took a little bit longer.
It was a little bit more difficult. They were hitting a lot better.
Hitting a lot better. So were you surprised that there were more, or were you still able to use the Scott Sight, see everything you needed?
Yeah. The Scott Sight did it. I just had to look at it. There were footprints in there.
Okay. So we had some, what they call in thermal imaging, latent images of where we could actually see the guy that was there before. So now we're going to give you a breather. We're going to give a breather. So while he's taking a bit of a rest, we're going to give away some t-shirts, right? Okay. So like years before past, I give the more t-shirts I give away based on the response that I get from you guys. So if I don't get a good response, this is like the only 4 t-shirts that I'm going to give away. But if I get a good response, I'm going to give more t-shirts away, because I have 2 boxes of t-shirts, right? So in years past, what we did, was anybody here last year? Besides, nobody was here last year. So last year, what we did is we split up the team, and I had one side of the room say Scott Sight, and I had one side of the room say hands free. Does everybody understand that? So if we split it right here, okay, right there where, there you go. This side is going to say yell Scott Sight, and this side is going to yell hands free. And if you do this, Scott Sight, hands free, I'm not going to give away t-shirts. But if you really get into it and you let everybody know in here that you're getting a chance to witness Scott Sight in performance, I'm going to start giving away t-shirts. So let's try this once to see what happens. Y'all ready? You ready? Here we go. Scott Sight, hands free. Oh, the hands free had you. The hands free had you. Okay, they got it. But we'll try it one more time, because I'm going to give more shirts based on who's the loudest on the side. Now, you guys are a little bit of a disadvantage, but you have some Scott employees over here that are helping. So, but we're really going to need some performance. So let's try it one more time. That was better. That was better. Last time, and then we're going to be ready to go. You guys ready? Great, greened up, ready to go. Last time, I really want to hear it loud as we can go. Excellent. So let's start giving some shirts away. Just come see these ladies and get the size. But before you do that, because I'm gonna give, don't come now because we're gonna watch this race. But you guys are getting shirts, okay? So don't think that I'm jipping you out of shirts. You're gonna get them, but I want to give the respect to these guys of what they're about to go through, okay? So here we go. Are we ready? Are they placed? Jamie, are we good? All right. Same as before. I'm gonna say ready, set, go, and when I do that, then you're gonna go, and then we're gonna see who comes out. Be safe. You guys ready? We got 4. 4, ready? Ready, set, go. Here we go. One of these guys is going to walk away with a Scott sight here today. 8 seconds in, 9 seconds in, so we've got a little bit there. They're about halfway home. You're having to search harder. We do make it a little more difficult when you are trying to get a Scott sight. Watch out, Therese. This could be fun. I would stay very clear of this area because when they come out, they're coming out fast. I don't think Therese signed the waiver. Oh, I hear something. So they're really. Here we go! Oh, look. Diving exit, and he is now the winner of Scott side. Give it up for, what was your name? Dave. Give it up for Dave. He just won a Scott side here at FDIC 2018. Great job. Great job. Great.
Thank you very much.
So you're walking away here with a Scott site. Did you ever have any thought that when you came to this show you would be leaving with hands-free technology?
No, this is my first year here, and when I came to this vendor, I just wanted to learn more about it. I've never seen it before. I just wanted a quick heads up, and I was just going to do this just to see what it's like to see through it in zero visibility. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, now you've got one, my friend. So, and because they did such a great performance, line up over here. We're going to give some T-shirts away. All right, we're going to be doing this tomorrow. So we appreciate you. We thank you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.